cool. We're live, and I hear like a weird like steampunk machine trickling in the back. So somebody's got a
Did he take this away?
wobbly GPO. We're live, by the way. What?
No, I'm just trying to. Video's gone. For some reason, it's not showing up listed in his live streams.
Uh-oh.
But yeah, I see it. I see where it is now. So.
Yodel.
Yep.
Yeah, your boy just made some crab ragoons, but they were shrimp ragoons, you know?
Shrimpies.
Shrimp boys.
Yeah, I can't do the shrimp thing. It was too much like, it's like too like vertebrae. It just looked like you're eating straight up just up.
I don't know, dude. I'm used to shellfish because of the diet I've been on, you know? So that's why I
bug too much in it.
Well, not a diet, but it's like the fast rules. Saint Benedict's rules.
Nice.
Which is like you can only have a winged animal. There's no like four-legged creatures. And seafood. So that's basically it.
Well, there he goes.
But what's going on?
I thought he was gonna share the screen.
Oh, look at that! Now it's doing that weird thing. Hold on.
Oh,
let's see if.
Oh shit, man. This is weird. I think it might be because Neurojack's running this shit through his phone. People can hear each other. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I had to switch to default MacBook audio.
What?
So what it does is when he leaves, right? For some reason, it changes the audio setting. That's what it was. Which I don't understand why it's doing that, but I figured it out. So you were right, actually. It was on my end.
I wonder what my audio is right now. Oh, my audio is not even my shit.
All right, there we go. Yeah, it just changed my audio shit too.
See, that's what I'm saying. Is like when he leaves, there's something like an inward setting that immediately changes your audio.
Fucking son of a flapjack.
Flip flops. What's up, Neuro Crack?
Yeah, we just been here like for 3 minutes. If you want to share the screen, I could get this rolling.
Oh wait, I could present, huh? Yeah, boy, I could.
No, not you.
Now. Oh, okay.
I'm talking
what
about.
Do you mean not me, dude? I'm gonna present now, bro.
I don't think you can. I think only Neuro can or whatever.
Well, why does it give me the option then?
It's an option that he's got to press a button to like do some shit.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, it's on some craziness.
Yeah, I'm gonna show my books at some point. The next stream I do, because I got them all over on this thing, and I'm gonna go through a bunch of books. Like, my plan for a show is like to kind of go through all the important books I think people should probably take a look at. You know what I'm saying? And like discuss some of them and maybe like open them up and go through them.
Yeah, I see what's happening here. He's not connecting. So he's just not connected. It's just like we're just here in a studio. So yeah, so we are live. But yeah, blessings to the people.
What up? Yeah, I think I'm going to cover Peter Mooring's mind control technology. See how that goes. You ever seen that book?
No. Mind control technology is the name of the book? That's a dope name.
Yeah.
It's a dope ass name.
It's crazy, dude. Well, I mean, it's like
do the T word.
Yeah. I also have a paper, silent weapons for quiet wars, that was found in like a
Nice. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Yeah, I got like a little outro to my
it
show.
was like found somewhere crazy, dude. Like the way they
Yeah.
found that paper, it was like in a Boeing. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, sorry, my internet's really bad, so I'm just it's
It's
taking.
all good. I figured that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Like the service out here has been really weird the past like 3 days. All right, cool.
Yeah, it's probably those
Yeah, it's because
invisible
you.
flying crafts. Like, like it's probably got
Yeah,
something to do with those.
they're sucking up the Wi-Fi. Yeah, you guys saw that. I'll share that on the screen later. But yes, the UFOs I saw today are pretty out of control for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, like they get any lower, our goose is cooked. Yeah, let's see what happens. All right, so all right, I'm gonna play this. Oh wait, whoops.
Trap of transhumanism. It's not just like completely utter crap apotheosis, which it is. But the trap of apotheosis is that it's never good enough anyway. You could never reach it because you're always trapped in your constraints. It's like Protestantism, but the authority is nature and the world.
Okay, so there you go. So you got a interesting set of values here. You got Gnosticism, Protestantism. So I don't understand how transhumanism could be both Gnosticism and Protestantism. Like I think those are at the very least somewhat distinct sets of beliefs, even though they may intersect at key junctures, right? Such as the fall of man and antinomianism and the libertinism and all this stuff. So it's interesting. I wonder if he'll make that connection, right? Because you could go that route.
Well, I mean, if his argument is if it like these ideologies develop from like a core rejection of Christianity in the Renaissance or something, is like that the argument? Because if it is, then that makes sense.
I don't think he said the Renaissance. But yeah. But he did say something about how most rejection of orthodoxy resembles Gnosticism. And then he's going to get to, yeah.
I guess that's true to an extent, because I think that, like, as far as Protestantism is concerned, right? Because like what we covered with Luther and the Rosicrucians, like, and the connection between Freemasonry and the Nicolaitans, like you could make that argument. But what the argument I would make, instead of like conflating them under the term of Gnosticism, I would say that they are part of the anti-Christ spirit in general, right? Like it doesn't necessarily have to be Gnostic to be anti-Christ.
Yeah, I would say like there's distinct heretical like, for example, Gnosticism, Marcionism, and Montanism, right? These would be three distinct classes. Like, for example, right? In Gnosticism, right? They have a sort of syncretistic belief, right, where they combine, elements of Zoroastrianism. They combine a bunch of different, ideas. Sometimes, ideas from Plato. Sometimes ideas from Judaism, right? So you got three distinct things going on there. You got, Judaism. You got Plato. You got, pagan, redoing of certain Zoroastrian views and all this type of stuff. Now, in Marcionism, right? Marcionists, they reject the law and they reject the Old Testament. They even say the Old Testament God is evil, right? But they don't claim that knowledge can save you. They claim it's salvation by faith alone, right? So they have a distinct creed then the Gnostics, and then the Montanists, they believe in a sort of Pentecostalism, right? So they believe you can get revelation if the Holy Spirit descends on you, right? And they have a bunch of prophetesses, and they got women and men praying together, and it's sort of a different sort of situation, right, than a Marcion or a Gnostic.
Right. I got something on Marcion here. It says Marcion, a native of Pontus, was the son of a bishop, but having corrupted a maiden, fled because he was excommunicated by his father. Coming to Rome, he then asked repentance from those who were there in charge of the church, but not having succeeded in this, he exalted himself against the faith and began to teach about three principles: good, just, and evil, and that the New Testament is alien to the Old, and to him who spoke in it. He and his Marcionites reject the resurrection of the flesh and admit not only one baptism, but two and three after the falls. They baptize others for the catechumens who have died. They also allow women to administer baptism without hindrance. The connection between the Marcionites and the classic Gnostics, I would say, is like it's the same principle that only these select few can understand this secret doctrine, whereas like Christianity teaches like all men are capable of salvation through the faith, right? So in that sense, like we would lump them in together, not that the distinctions don't matter, but rather
Right.
they're under the same umbrella of heresy, right?
Right, because sort of the Montanists would say that everyone can attain the same thing. There's no like secret, gnosis, right? So, because everybody's just like in the church, they're just like, it's like Pentecostalism where you get the Holy Spirit in you, and you get visions and stuff. And this is what we were reading in 14:14, right? Of 1 Corinthians, right, where Paul's sort of critiquing this concept. But yeah, it's
I'm gonna
interesting.
look at the Montanists. Yeah, I don't know a lot about them. I'm gonna look them up.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's like they got like, Montanus, Priscilla, and they got another like Maximilian. Where there's like all these people that are like part of that heretical sect. And I think Irenaeus writes about them too. I'm gonna most likely read that on my show today. Where Irenaeus talks about the Montanists, because Pagels goes crazy. She starts making speculations that Gnosticism is the same as the Jewish Kabbalah. It's crazy. And I'm like, okay, this is a pretty interesting passage. Like from this book, she's admitting a lot of weird stuff.
What's going on? All right. What's going on here? Okay.
Montanus.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so I got something on Montanism here. It says it was a heretical movement that originated in 156 and was named after its founder, Montanus. It flourished mostly in and around the region of Phrygia in Asia Minor, where early on its followers were called Cataphrygians or something. It spread to other regions in Roman Empire. This heresy arose at a time before Christianity was generally tolerated or legal in the Roman world. With the mainstream of the Orthodox Church prevailing against the Montanism, the movement died out within a few generations, although the sect persisted in some isolated places into the 8th century. While claiming conversion to Christianity, Montanist preached and testified when he purported to be the Word of God as he traveled among the royal settlements of his native Phrygia and Asia Minor. In these travels, he claimed the village of Papuza as the site of New Jerusalem. The Orthodox Christians, however, regarded his teaching to be heretical. He claimed not only to have received a series of direct revelations from the Holy Spirit, but personally to be the incarnation of the Paraclete mentioned in the Gospel of John, which is 14 and 16. Montanus was accompanied by two women, Prisca, sometimes called Priscilla, and Maximilia, who likewise claimed to be the embodiment of the Holy Spirit that moved and inspired them. As they traveled, the three, as they were called, spoke in ecstatic visions, and in the first person as the Father or the Paraclete. They urged their followers to fast and pray, so they might share these personal revelations. His message spread from his native Phrygia across the Christian world of the 2nd century to Africa and Gaul. Prisca claimed that Christ had appeared to her in female form. When she was excommunicated, she exclaimed, "I am driven away like the wolf from the sheep. I am no wolf. I am the word in spirit and power." Okay. Wow.
Hallelujah, holla back.
But yeah, you kind of see what I see with that is a clear example, like something like we would call prelust, where she's thinking that she's the word, the spirit, and the power all in one person. I mean, it just sounds quite diluted just reading that. It is generally agreed that the movement was inspired by Montanus' interpretation of the Gospel of St. John. He says, "I will send you the advocate, Paraclete, the spirit of truth." Okay, the response to this continuing revelation split many Christian communities of the 2nd century, and the Orthodox clergy fought to suppress it. Bishop Apollinaris found the church at Ancrina, or Ancira, something like that. Ancira, torn in two, and he posed the false prophecy. He quoted by Eusebius 5:16 and 5, but there was real doubt in Rome. Pope Aluris even wrote letters supporting Montanism, although he later recanted them. That's in Tertullian Adversus Praxian. Okay. The most widely known defender of Montanus was undoubtedly Tertullian, one-time champion of Orthodox belief, who believed that the new prophecy was genuine and began to fall out of step with what he began to call the Church of a lot of bishops on modesty. Although the Orthodox Christian Church rebelled against Montanism within a few generations, elements of Montanism persisted. Inscriptions in the Timbris Valley of northern Phrygia, dated between 249 and 279, openly proclaimed their allegiance to Montanism. A letter of St. Jerome to Marcella, written in 385, refutes the claims of the Montanists who had been troubling her. Letter 41. A group of Tertullianists continue to exist in Carthage. The anonymous author of Pia Destinatus records that a preacher came to Rome in 388, made many converts, and obtained the church of use of a church for his congregation on the grounds of the martyrs whom it was dedicated had been Montanus. He was obliged to flee after the victory, as Theodosius the Great, who supported the Orthodox belief. Augustine records that the Tertullian group dwindled to almost nothing in his own time, and that the remnant of the group finally was reconciled to the church and surrendered their basilica. It is not certain whether these Tertullianists were Montanists or not. In the 6th century, John of Ephesus, at the order of Emperor Justinian, led an expedition to Propusa to destroy the Montanist shrine there, which was formed around the tombs of Montanus, Priscilla, and Maximilia. Okay, so it gives us some distinctions between these two beliefs of Orthodox Christianity and the Montanists. It says the belief that the prophecies of the Montanists succeeded and fulfilled the doctrine proclaimed by the apostles. The encouragement of aesthetic prophesying contrasting with more sober and disciplined approach to theology dominant in Orthodox Christianity at the time and since. In other words, they were carried away by prophesying, that like seeing visions. And this was a point I was trying to make when Twilight was here. The imagination is like, this is the quote I was trying to find. I'm not to like take up all this time, but I think it is important to cover this. Why Orthodox, just to give a perspective on why Orthodox would consider something like this problematic. And it's the same reason we find the Roman Catholics problematic with their understanding of the rosary prayers. So, one moment. So this is something that Father Seraphim Rose said. He said, in a conversation, Father Seraphim explained the use of the imagination in Western spiritual systems of meditation while saying the rosary, reciting the stations of the cross, or doing the spiritual exercises of Ignatius of Loyola was not compatible with Orthodox spirituality and was forbidden because imagination came into use only after the fall of Adam and Eve. It is one of the lowest functions of the soul and the favorite playground of the devil, who can and does use human imagination to in order to deceive and mislead even well-meaning people. So they were trusting visions without proper asceticism and they were trusting visions without proper but without properly preparing themselves for something like that. And this is something too to think about is the majority of ascetics, they'll say like if they have a vision, they don't trust it outright. There's like a questioning, a testing of the spirit. Um It goes on to say the view that Christians who fell from grace could not be redeemed, in contrast to the Orthodox Christian view that contrition could lead to a sinner's restoration to the church. So they believe you couldn't repent and return to the church. The prophets of Montanism did not speak as messengers of God, thus said the Lord, but rather described themselves as possessed by God and spoke in his person. I am the Father, the Word, and the Paraclete.
Right.
Sounds very much like, like the New Age
Right.
Pentecostals.
Yeah, this is more new age than like the other stuff like Freemasonry is more Gnostic, right, or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
This is more like a Pentecostal spirit that's almost appearing as if it's Christ or the Holy Spirit.
Right. Because that's
It's
literally
a
what Blavatsky said. She's like,
right.
Christ is gonna like wake up and like Christ consciousness is gonna wake up in like each person,
Well,
respectively.
that's kind of an interesting point though, because we were talking about yesterday with that New Age magazine and Athenagoras and this Joaquim of Flores or whatever his name is. I don't say it correctly, but there's teaching of like a fourth age of the Holy Spirit.
Right.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Father Seraphim in that quote says that there is a root to this in Montanism. Now, if I would to say something like, okay, Athenagoras was a Freemason, and he's introducing Montanist beliefs, there is a connection there, right? But it's still a distinction that needs to be made, I guess, to understand the fullness of what's going on. So I agree with that.
Right. So
Yeah, I
that's what I'm
agree
saying.
with what
It's
you
like
said.
and if you look at the book Against Heresies, it's like he lays all this out. He lays like the distinctions between all these groups, right? So it's like,
Absolutely.
so this is the
And it's
thing.
important to do that because it's like, what are we saying and why is it problematic? It's like a Freemason, we could connect that with Gnosticism, right? But what this Freemason's teaching, if he's teaching a Montanist belief system, it'd be better for the person discerning the situation to understand the distinctions between what makes Freemasonry Gnosticism and what makes this teaching about the fourth age of the Holy Spirit Montanist, and why these are condemned heresies from the Orthodox perspective, right? Like I think that is important.
Yeah, it
Uh,
certainly helps boost your sensitivity to the issues and gain
it guards
a level
you,
of historiography, right?
right, and it guards you from like falling into these traps. Like that's something that Orthodox Survival course written by Father Seraphim Rose, he sort of lays out all these issues throughout history that the church has faced. And what he's attempting to do is give Orthodox Christian, that's why it's called a survival course. It's to give them weapons against these ideologies that are trying to, like, subvert us and bring us closer to these wrong beliefs from our perspective, right? And that takes having a historical context to the things that could be trying to infiltrate the church. It says Jerome and other church leaders claim that the Montanists of their own day held the belief that the Trinity consisted of only a single person, similar to Sabellianism. So it's like Sabellianism was like the the God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit were just
Yeah, it's like
changing mass.
Neoplatonism. Yeah,
It's like changing mass, right?
yeah,
As
yeah,
opposed to the Orthodox view that the
yeah. It's
Trinity is
modalist.
one
Yeah,
person of three is one God of three persons, which Tertullian actually held that belief. So he had the traditional belief of the Holy Trinity. There were some who were indeed modalistic monarchians, which Sabellians, and some of them were closer to the Trinity doctrine. It is reported that the modalists baptized mention the name of Jesus Christ as opposed to mentioning the Holy Trinity. So we see that with Protestants nowadays, that they refuse to say in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and they don't do triple immersion. They do single immersion baptisms in the name of Jesus Christ alone. And that I think that has to deal with this same belief system. As opposed to mentioning the Trinity, most of the later Montanists were of the modalist camp. That's interesting. And where I'm getting this, just for the record, this is the Orthodox Wiki, and I don't recommend this site too often because the person that runs it, I think he's a new calendar or something. But even then, like for the majority of things, like if you look at like, for instance, this like Montanism, he's going to be pretty spot on. Oh, you see, Eusebius wrote about this in his Historia Ecclesia or Ecclesi or something. It's it'd be chapter 5, pages 16 through 18. You can find something on that.
yeah. It's interesting.
Oh, they got a page full of heresies here, and like I'm right here. I'm like Bogomilism, Apollinarianism, Apothartodocetism. Wow, dude. I wonder what that is. That okay? There's this heresy Donatism. Have you ever heard of this?
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah, but I'm not
This is
sure what.
what the World Orthodox claim we true Orthodox are. So what it was is, this is super interesting. So the Docetists basically said that the bishops had to be perfect. Like they couldn't sin. There couldn't be regular sins, right? Like they absolutely had to be perfect. And if they were perfect, they couldn't be a bishop. And
Yeah,
yeah,
they were super ascetic.
yeah, like they were
Yeah,
sectarians, right?
yeah, I heard about this.
Well, see, the World Orthodox claim we're like this, but they conflate heresy and sin. So a heresy is separation from God, right? And that's understood like within Orthodox tradition, that the moment someone falls into heresy, this is another level of a sin. It's still a sin, but it's
I
like the blasphemy of the Holy Spirit is the
yeah, I think
unforgivable sin.
yeah, I think maybe the Ebionites were Docetists, or I could have that confused. But
Donatism. This is
yeah,
Docetists.
Donatists. Yeah, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Donatist. Yeah. So yeah, they might have been. But this was a heresy that St. Augustine was kind of going against. Well, the World Orthodox claim we're this, and what they say is they conflict. They say that the humanists are only sinning, right? So this is how they play it off, and that changing the calendar was just a sin. It wasn't a heresy. So there's nothing. So it was wrong for us to break communion over just a sin. But it's like you're saying a Freemason who's making reforms in the church is just sinning, and that's not heresy. You see what I'm saying? So they try to conflate these two things, heresy and sin. But that's how rhetoric, like, the Orthodox have always faced this sort of rhetoric from those that have
Right. Yeah, I
fallen
heard
into
about that.
heresy.
Yep. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
That whole debate.
sucks, dude. Because there's so many people who actually believe it, right? Like it's like I've had so many people come up to me or like just sort of like message me or whatever, and even like there's been people who visited the church who have asked that question and is like, "Are you guys Donatist?" And there's always this having to explain that differentiation. Um, a good way to do it, I'll show you the way we refute this, like the polemic, is pretty interesting. So, and now this is a polemic that Father Joseph had actually put me onto. I didn't know about it until he showed me this. It's brilliant. So here it is. Okay, so separation from God. It is said concerning Abba Agathon that some monks came to find him, having heard tell of his great discernment, went to see if he would lose his temper. They said to him, quote, "Aren't you that Agathon who is said to be a fornicator and a proud man?" He says, "Yes, it's very true." He answered. They resume, "Aren't you that Agathon who's always talking nonsense?" He says, "I am." Again they said, "Aren't you Agathon the heretic?" But at that he replied, "I am not a heretic." So they asked him, quote, "Tell us why you accepted everything we cast at you, but repudiated this last insult." He replied, "The first accusations I take to myself, for that is good for my soul. But heresy is separation from God. Now I have no wish to be separated from God." At this saying, they were astonished at his discernment and returned edified. So, in other words, Agathon is making a distinction when they're accusing him of fornication, when they accuse him of, being a proud man and talking too much. He accepts that. But the moment they say, "Are you a heretic?" he repudiates it because there's a difference between your normal sins that we can repent of and outright heresy, right? Now, if you conflate those two things, then you can pass it off as if the true Orthodox are sectarians, right? And it's like, no, there's a distinction.
Yeah, because it helps clarify the belief system. Because and actually, you know what? Some of those, like I'm pretty sure I've heard like Twilight say that he's gotten information from Irenaeus because there's just no information from the actual people themselves, right? So yeah,
What,
it's
on
interesting.
like Gnostic beliefs and things?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, like
Yeah,
he's so
because they're the
carefully
ones who
described these
document
things.
it.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's so carefully described these things that some of the texts are used by modern Gnostics, right, to explain their own beliefs, right? Which is just astounding, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, because they were like, they're the only ones who documented it, and you get pieces that they don't. There's pieces of those belief systems, and what was it? Because the library of Alexandria was burnt down or something, that those papers aren't reserved or something? Like what is it? Is it that?
Right. Yeah, they're missing the the texts that are in question.
Right. And so you have Irenaeus who had the text and he's reading from them, like documenting it, as that was going on. I'm sure you could go to St. John in Damascus and do the same thing. because he does, if I'm not mistaken, he's got an entire book just like Irenaeus, which is like a continuation. And there's another number of fathers who did that, like sort of were in the same line of polemic writing as Irenaeus.
So I have this theory that you can like look at the liberalism and how they're trying to spread the universalist message in all these traditions and make them more accommodating towards each other. And you can see the spread of capital, like in different countries. Maybe you can create like a kind of, I don't know, statistical method and make a prediction. I think they're just, trying to like, Orthodox Church, make it more liberal, make them more inclusive. Same reason why they have inclusive diversity in Google. There was a leaked document from Google where they were talking about wanting to promote inclusive diversity because they want to, spread the capital and also make people more dependent on the fragile artificial system and stuff. So
I can
I
give you a
think
history on that, actually, like if you want. Go ahead, though.
so. It's like a coordinated effort with these UGOs, NGOs, my bad, NGOs. So NGOs are working for stuff like UNESCO or working for like the UN and stuff, so they can like,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And they're paying off organizations like the World Council of Churches.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so so all these churches are taking those fundings and they'll kind of like, repeat the propaganda that's being pushed to continue the funding. Like that's really it. And it started in the 60s. See, a Freemason had come up with the idea of the World Council of Churches, and he used a Greek word, economia, um, or an ecumenical council to sort of conflate the idea of an Orthodox ecumenical council where all the local churches come together to make a decision. And he said, all Christian churches are going to come together to make a decision in a one world modernist religion. But yeah, John Mott was the first guy to sort of introduce this, and he was a Rothschild funded guy who I think he was like something to do with the YMCA, something like that. I gotta look it up. John Mott.
Yeah, but it's like a chicken and egg kind of problem. Like, are the Freemasons like, do they really believe in what they're doing, or are they just like closely coordinating with the multinational industries? Because the multinational industries benefit from the
Well,
spread of egoism too.
I'll tell you that I believe there is an aspect of them that actually believes like the doctrine of Freemasonry that, they bow at every altar, right? Like if you read the Lost Keys of Freemasonry, Manly P. Hall describes the Mason sees Christ and Buddha and all these other religions as on the same level, describing the same thing. They're all myths, right? That are pointing to man sort of being Christ. Um, in this book, Athanasius, the Church of Our Time, Bishop Rudolph Graber quoted a Freemason who declared that, quote, the goal of Freemasonry is no longer the destruction of the church, but to make use of it by infiltrating it. So I believe they do see benefit in infiltration of the church. And I do see the Montanist belief that there's a fourth age of the Holy Spirit that's being taught by bishops like or patriarchs like Athenagoras and his the person that took over after him, Demetrius and Bartholomew, who are Masons. I believe they do believe that doctrine.
Like the perennialist doctrine, basically perennialism. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yes.
And
But
that's
doesn't
carrying it over
Twilight argue?
Freemasonry.
Doesn't Twilight argue similar things? So he does have similar beliefs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
That's my question to him is like if you're against these elite organizations and you're against Freemasonry and you're against all the New World Order as he says, why does he have the same belief as them? And I think a lot of people need to ask themselves that question from this generation because they're so quick to fall into Gnosticism. But I would argue the reason that they are is because the propaganda that's been perpetuated by Freemasonry.
Well, that affects more than just the Christians. It also affects the Buddhists, the Muslims, and pretty much everyone else.
Exactly. But
yeah.
look, I could agree with you in this sense. Like, check this out. You're a Buddhist, right?
Yes.
Would you want your Buddhism to be conflated with my religion and Hinduism and every other religion?
No.
You see what I'm saying?
That's why
It's
I'm
like,
agreeing with you. That's why
yeah, exactly. But that's what the Gnostic wants. That's what I mean, the Mason wants. He wants to conflate all religions into a world religion where there's no distinction. And it's for political purposes at the end of the day, like what you're talking about, because they can do business deals and, further their infrastructure. And it's the same concept of having a one world government or a one world currency. It makes things easier for the lukewarm. And it's like you can have your religion as long as you bow to us. That's the concept of the World Council of Churches.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious. Yeah, I mean, like you give more pertinent details though. So yeah, but the World Council of Churches and other stuff, it is kind of strange how there are lots of Gnostics and there. I will tell you this now. Like I don't trust the National Socialist or the Anglo-capitalist, or whatever. You see, all of them are united by wanting to project power. And when you want to project power, they utilize tactics like, I don't know, creating a universal narrative. You see what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, that's how
where
they
everybody can fit under one umbrella. And
Yes.
Eustace Mullins says like fascism, communism, capitalism all came out of the Frankfurt's out of Frankfurt, Germany, with at the Rothschild house or something like that. Like I can't remember exactly what he said, but I mean I kind of believe that, like that that just in the same way the communists are willing to fund neo-Nazis or whoever to accelerate their goals of destabilization of a nation, why wouldn't the bankers be funding both sides of a war if they're guaranteed their return? If each of these let's say gangs, because that's really what they were, like the Bolsheviks were a gang, are accepting funds from these bankers, and it's like they don't care who comes out on top because they get paid either way. They're guaranteed their return in some way, right? uh, and I think the end goal for them, it's like, who cares if these nations fight or these people fight, as long as we have control of the money and the resources. And that's something the Rothschild said. He's like, I don't care who runs or is like the prime minister of a nation. It's who has control of the resources.
Yeah, I agree. I read several thinkers. I always thought it was weird how Guanon and Evola are perennialists. I think perennialism is stupid. Like it's and also it's fishy too. Like they do give some truths, but they also mix it with lies. I mean,
I
the
don't
lies.
think that. I think there is a level to it where it's like they don't necessarily believe in anything. I think they're humanists at their root, right? And I think they'll believe anything that furthers their agenda for control over the world.
Yeah, that's
That's
right.
it. It's not actually a spiritual belief, but it's useful for the Zionists, for example, to make it out this myth that the collective Messiah has to control Israel and the world. You know what I mean? That's useful to have a spiritual belief like this, or pass it off as a spiritual belief, when in reality it's not based in anything. Like they just kind of made it up, you know.
Yeah, there are different levels of this anti-modernism. I think the level you approach it from is a valuable, important one. There's another level where the data level, the technological level, like Klaus Schwab, he said data, or forgot who it was, where I read it, I have to remember, but data is more valuable than the products they produce now. You see, I mean, we live in a kind of data monopolization era. AWS and Azure, they have like data centers in Europe, Asia, America, and they're all connected. You believe that? They're all gathering data from the cloud and storing that data. and it's like they're monopolizing data, and that really accelerated around the time of 2019. So that level is also important. Like most people don't know about it. Like you know about what I'm talking about, cloud computing, or not really? Like
Yeah, I know a little bit about it. I mean,
yeah.
didn't Snowden kind of expose some of that stuff too? Like, I don't know.
Uh,
Are we
no,
talking about the same one?
Snowden was focusing more on like the government level. You see, like I forgot the name of it, but that's kind of different from the Amazon and the Microsoft level. You see,
I
those guys,
see. I see. It's like
yeah,
the corporations are gathering this
yeah.
for a particular purpose.
Yeah,
So,
I can show you a map of where all the Amazon Web Services and Azure data centers are. They're big data centers where they have like tons of servers, and the servers are collecting data from the edge. Like they can collect it from sensors, they can collect it from your phones, and then they're like tunneling it to the cloud where they just store it for data analytics and stuff like that. And more people don't know about it. You see, the problem is AI. Just talking about AI by itself doesn't make sense. It's the AI interface with the cloud computing technologies that's dangerous. You see what I mean? Like when you
right.
interface them, that makes it more of a global network. You see, like I mean, Klaus Schwab and Yuval Harari do at least tell us about this. It's evil stuff, but they do kind of tell you.
Well, I mean, don't they like release it in movies too? Like, I mean, I remember like The Dark Knight sort of having the grid of phones where they could like view you in your apartment, hear what you're saying, and like it's like that's definitely happening. But even with the data collecting, that's more in depth, like associated with propaganda. If they can direct your algorithm system to funnel you into more capitalist mindsets of like buying this product from this particular service, and this service is connected with these elitists that are funneling this money into like a militarianism system where they're going to use it to control the world, and people aren't realizing this, like we're funding our enslavement you know
Yeah, yeah, I
that's
agree. Yeah.
dangerous.
They also are, refining the algorithms. That's, most of our tax dollars probably go into that. They're just refining the algorithm to better manipulate and make us subservient to the globalist system. You know what I mean? The techno liberalism, or the,
Right.
inclusivity and stuff like that.
And this is something like I posted a video I think last month. Like I made it clear like globalism and communism are the same thing. It's just like an international communist um, world revolution. Like that's what that was that's the Trotskyite plan, like a constant revolution um, at all
Yeah,
times.
I would say that the capitalist system, the communist, and the national socialist, even the some of the Islamo communism stuff that emerged too. I think all of that is united by the desire of the globalist system. They want global power. You see what I mean? And that's
Right.
yeah, that's the problem.
There's like the Western capitalist globalism versus the communist international globalism. And in a lot of ways, they want it to seem as if like the US and let's say Russia are against each other. But the further you look into it, it's like since 1917, Hoover's sending money to the Soviet Union, and there's like members of the Federal Reserve Bank saying, we feel like communism is the best system for Russia. Why is the Federal Reserve Bank telling Woodrow Wilson that's the best system for the Russian people, right? And it's like because the bankers would rather a totalitarian government running things because they're guaranteed returns, right? It's like if you're dealing with someone who's not willing to sell out their people and play ball, then they're kind of stifling your plans for world domination, right? And we have a situation where like there's a naivety or almost like a not care, like it's dog eat dog, where our political people here are willing to sell out the nation as long as their individual interests are, you know, covered. It's wild. But
Yeah,
yeah, the Soviet and America like are working together. The Mossad's working with, you know, the CIA. The CIA is working with the KGB. It all feels like they're just like an army for the shadow government. I think Cooper's right about that, you know?
yeah. Don't forget MI6. Yeah,
Yeah,
MI6.
that too.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
They're all
yeah.
connected.
They are all connected. Yeah, that's the problem. It's a pretty big problem. Yeah. Uh, I was gonna say something, I forgot, but let me think. You know, yes, it is kind of a massive problem. For many reasons. Besides the ones we touched on, another reason is ecological matters. It is very unsustainable. You know what I mean? It's
Well, you look
volatile.
at we're already in like a communist system and we don't even
Yeah,
realize it. You know,
yeah,
it's like the propaganda has got us to the point where we still believe like this is a free country, that we're capitalists and all this other stuff. But the reality is like you know, both sides of the politicians are, you know, the leftists are clear socialists and then the conservatives are neo-Trotskyites. So both are socialists, you know what I mean? Like they're commies. And we don't realize that.
yeah,
And,
yeah.
and we're dealing with like a corporate globalism where it's like corporations are pushing us towards this enslaved system,
Let
you
me
know?
ask you a question.
Yeah.
BlackRock and Vanguard, they have been
Yeah.
going around and trying to buy people's properties. And I think what BlackRock and Vanguard are responsible for is like the influx of immigrants and also a lot of work because they're trying to make house prices unstable or something, and they're
They
just trying
did
to
that in Russia.
yeah, they did it to Russia. They're trying to do the same thing to America, so that way they can swoop in and buy people's properties, and
Mhm.
and then they have a renting
Well,
economy
put it
or
this way. During the
BlackRock.
Bolshevik Revolution, there was a question asked to one of the Rothschilds, like, aren't you worried about, like, you know, the Bolsheviks destroying your homes or whatever? And, like, no, we're not worried about that at all. The price of homes went down during the revolution because more people were driven out, more people were killed. All these houses are going up on the market. People are selling their land and leaving Russia. When they did this, the Rothschilds bought up vast amounts of housing and land in Russia to control that for later time. And then they sell it on the market for 10 times the price when the revolution's over. You dig what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And they
that's
play with the
happening.
markets like this all the time. Like they know what's going to happen because they're causing it, you know?
Yeah, both my dad and I figured out something like that is happening again in America.
Yeah.
It's happening. Yeah,
Mullins talks about that actually. I mean, if you look at I have two videos from Eustace Mullins, the magical money machine, where he covers the Federal Reserve Bank. And now this is him going to. He went to congressional records to figure out his stuff on this issue. And then he's got another video I posted. It's called The New World Order. He wrote a book called The World Order, where he covers sort of like the Federal Reserve System and how they're manipulating the markets. Yeah, it's worth a watch. But he relates it
yeah,
back with Russia the same way. Like it's.
yeah. Give me that. I'll look into that later. I have looked into this stuff a bit,
I'll
but I
post it.
want to look into more. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah, there's
yeah. It's a myth.
Mullins is real good with it. There's another guy, Anthony Sutton. Anthony Sutton, he's got a couple books on like the trilaterals over Washington, Skull and Bones, like this type of stuff, like how the Bolsheviks were funded by the you know the Warburgs and the Rothschilds. Same with the Nazis. Like he there's a connection between all this. And that, if you really think about this, how are we supposed to believe, like a case with like in Germany, how are we supposed to believe this guy if the world's run by the Jays at this time, right? How and the Germany was at that time as well. Like they had control of the banking system there. How are we supposed to believe this guy just got set up over Germany without any problem, without an assassination or any of that. Like, you know, if the Mossad and the Zionists are so strong at this time, why would it be problem? How could he get in his place? I guess that's the question nobody asked, and the answer is because they put him in his place. You know,
He got loans from the Bank of England, I think so.
which is Rothschild. That's
Yes.
Rothschild money.
Yeah, I
You
know.
know, and
Yeah.
but I mean they wash it so he could get it from like the Warburgs, you know, or Cohen Loan Company. These companies were Rothschild employees. Like, for instance, for a long time, there was talk that the Rothschilds didn't own anything in America. Well, in reality, they had the Cohen Loan Company, Loeb Company, as their face. So it's a different name, but it's still Rothschild owned.
Yeah, that's it's basically it comes down to these wealthy families like Rockefellers, DuPonts, Rothschilds. There are a couple more. I think one group that tends to go, unanalyzed by people like you are the black nobility. Though those guys are like Pallavicinis. You know about the Pallavicinis? Those guys are kind of fishy too. Or the Dio Brandis. You know about the Dio Brandis?
Well, yeah. Well, like in Italy, there's like 4
Yeah.
or 5 families that control the papacy, and that would be known as the black nobility, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, yeah. They're called like Pallavicinis, and and also Dio Brandinis or something like that. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Mullins covers that as well. I mean, he talks about that a little bit. I think even then though, it's like they're all working together. Like
Yes, they're all working
you don't get to that level without, I guess, like crossing lines with those people.
Yes, they're all working together basically because of the common interest of expanding their power, and so they do stuff like spread liberalism across the world. It's possible they want to change their strategies in the future though. So I don't know like what.
Well, I mean, so a lot of people say things like, "Well, it's not the Jays; it's these secret brotherhoods, Freemasonry." And I would say, like, to be honest with you, B'nai B'rith and the Rothschilds are at the top, right? I think the Rothschilds at the top. I think B'nai B'rith is an offshoot of what the initial Illuminati was from Weishaupt, and it's continued to this day. And what Zionism is B'nai B'rith's political arm, right? It's like this is how the Rothschilds are doing their bidding in the world. So I do think, like, at the top of the pyramid, you're dealing with basically atheistic, humanist Jews. I don't believe they believe in anything, but they
I don't
sell
know.
a spiritual belief.
Could it be like the top is like they're coexisting with the the Anglo elite or whatever, and because there are some books that argue that Tavistock, about Tavistock, and
No, I mean, I believe that they're working with them because they say, like Herzl said, he said, those pigs, the Gentile Masons, don't even know what what they're working for or something like that. And I believe what he was talking about was B'nai B'rith, because all other lodges are subservient or beneath B'nai B'rith, which is the Jewish Masonry. That's at the highest point. Like, and I think they'll accept Gentiles, or you have to be half Jew to even join. It's something like that. Reading the protocols talks about, and protocol 14 or 15, it talks about once they get what they need, then the Goyim Freemasons have to be destroyed. And I believe that's the case. I don't know. I think they're at the head.
Yeah, I don't like the Jays, the B'nai B'rith or Israel, but what I'm saying is that let's say they got rid of then the Anglo Royals or like BP or whatever, or I don't know, the black nobility, they'll step in and it will perpetuate, it will continue still. You see what I mean? Because they have vested.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think as of right now, they're just like they're still using them for their cause or whatever. Maybe the black nobility or the the Anglo-Saxon royals that are subservient to the Rothschild family, because they are. You can find pictures of like one of the royalty getting poked in his chest by one of the Rothschilds.
Yeah, I saw
There's a
that.
picture like that. So I mean, it's clear who's subservient to who. And I mean, the oldest Rothschild, one of the grandfathers, like the old quote where he's like, "I don't care who runs England as long as it's about who runs the resources," and that stands true to this day. That's why one of them can poke one of those royals in the chest. You're not going to see anybody else do that.
Yeah, I think ultimately they have a kind of struggle. Like Putin is surrounded by Chabad, Lukavich, billionaire Jews. Like most people don't know that Putin is like surrounded by these billionaire Jews, and it's like a
You know why that is?
Because they're puppets. Yeah.
No, well, yeah, that's true. But Henry Macau documents in his book, I think it's Illuminati 3 or 4. It might be 4. He says that Putin was actually raised by a Lubavitcher. Like, it's something like that. Like, he was raised in a Lubavitch household. Like his grandmother or something.
Yeah, just like Stalin. This is proof that
that's what it is.
That he might have been a Jew.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
His father,
he's like a Jew from Georgia,
his grandmother worked for Stalin in the kitchen or something.
There we go, dude. I think like Gurdjieff and Stalin might have met. Isn't that weird?
Yeah. Well, Stalin, Tito, Freud, Hitler, and all of them were in Vienna at the same time.
Yeah, the last 100 years or so, or maybe more than that, a lot of conspiracies are true. Like there's lots of like you think they're actually fighting, or like the narrative they tell you is true, but in reality it's like the chase or
Well, look, like you got the picture of Woodrow Wilson, Churchill, and Stalin shaking hands, cross-armed like Freemasons. And supposedly what Cooper says is like at that moment they decided that after that Stalin would be the next enemy or something like that in the world's eyes. Like they have to perpetuate the wars to keep the military industrial complex going, which is they're using the military industrial complex, all the funds that are going for these wars, to support building their new world order. So.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I would say they already have built the new world order. They're just trying to strengthen it more now, basically.
It's gonna get to a point where it's just like a complete lockdown, like communist global gulag,
Yeah, I mean, near my house, they built a bunch of commie blocks, like ugly looking houses, like stacked. It wasn't there 10 years ago or 8 years ago. They built it because my area became a college town and they want more immigrants and more people going to the college and blah, blah, blah. And so the area is now more like densely populated and crowded. I mean, it's more crowded.
Right. Now they're setting up their, worker bee farms, man. And,
yes.
And that's why they don't. I think there is a depopulation goal there, but there still has to be, like, they want worker bees. They need people, like, to make their things, So I think they're going to perpetuate that. Like, whatever they can do to keep the system a well-oiled machine leading nowhere. I'll be right back.
Yeah, it does seem that way, yeah. I see it.
Yeah, all right. I guess let's do the while Unseen gets back. Blessings to the people. I'm attempting to review part of this video here. Blessings to Earth Supporter. Thank you for watching.
You're trying to argue against the authority of nature in the world, which is an argument against God himself in a sense. And so they think, very Gnostic, to believe that the earth, the world, its constraints, nature is something like a prison that you have to escape. And the irony, as I've
It's weird. He's saying all this, but the guy in the debate, he takes the position that he loves nature and that he's a through and through materialist, so he wants to remain experiencing the material world, right? So none of what he's saying actually equates to, or none of what this guy says actually equates to them wanting to transcend nature, right? I mean, he wants to exemplify nature. He's sort of a techno-Gaianist as well as a transhumanist, right? To an extent.
Seen in the chat, so many smart people in my chat. That's why we have one of the smaller chats. That's what I like to say. The escape becomes the prison. Like the whole view that you have to escape something becomes the prison. As many of you said, living forever is a prison. That sounds like hell. Well, there's always some new thing to escape. It's like the Matrix, but it's fractal. Never-ending levels of Matrix that you're always looking at the thing to escape. Well, we escaped death. Now we need to escape the constraints of physical reality. Because look, if you escape death and you hypothetically made it so your fleshly being could exist forever, you're existing forever in a material nature, right? Well, now that's your new constraint. And then you have the constraint once you transcend the physical reality and you go full digital and you live forever. Now,
right. It's like he's very retardedly explaining the myth of progress. Right. Things don't actually get better. It's just an illusion that things are moving ahead. Yes, of course, you can always reach for a different goal, but that doesn't mean things are qualitatively gotten better just because you've kicked the can down the road. Right. So it's pretty obvious. That whole aspect of things.
You have the constraint of other minds. Why have other minds? Why not just craft a solipsistic, eternal, blissful, euphoric utopia forever? Right? A prison of your own desires. Why not?
Aging at some point. They've had plenty of studies that they've been able to do that in mice and things like that. So, but that said, it's also a social movement. It's this idea that we can become superhumans. We can go off planet. We don't have to be, susceptible to breathing air, to choking on food, or.
See what I'm saying? What did I just say?
Yeah, but see, he's conflating going to space with escaping your material frame, or because that's what the Gnostics want to do, right? So just because you go to space doesn't mean you're trying to escape nature, right? It doesn't mean it's not the same level of escapism, right? So
it's never enough. Oh, the constraints of reality. This is like the same argument that atheists.
I don't think going to space means you're making a statement about the constraints of reality, right? You're simply going to space, right? So you're just moving around within reality, right? So it's not trying to transcend nature or reality, right? I'm not getting that.
Oh, if God exists, why bad thing happened? What do you mean? So your argument is, if God exists, why can I not go underwater forever? That's a bad thing for me. I want to go underwater. I want to be able to breathe underwater forever. Same crap from Zoltan here. Well, we have to transcend every part of reality. I'm so tired of the laws of physics. It's so self-refuting. Oh, I'm so tired of, we got to transcend the laws of physics.
In being too cold or too hot. Eventually we can overcome these things, upgrade ourselves to become.
Oh God, what a gay position. It's like, you know what it is, you guys? It's let's remove the necessity of sacrifice. It's the most pussy bitch based position ever.
Wait, what? Sacrifice. That's an interesting word that he's employed here. He said, let's remove the necessity of sacrifice. And he means physical sacrifice to attain a goal, right? But he's employed this term, which is obviously has spiritual connotations, right? It's a debate in Christianity versus transhumanism. So he said, you've removed the need for sacrifice. They do this a lot, or they encode their statements, right, to sort of make 2 points at once, right, without saying the other part out loud.
Zoltan, now I don't like him. I was like saying, like, well, I'd have a beer with him. Now I want to punch him. I want to punch him. He's like a kid saying to his dad, but I don't want to work hard and I don't want to sacrifice. I don't want to bleed. I don't want to sweat. I hate sweating. Sweating's icky. I'll punch you. Needs to be punched right in his face. Not debated. He needs to be punched.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll punch him, you big fat pussy. Come on, dude.
Why are you so gay? Why are these people so gay? Why are they so gay? I just woke up groggy and I want to get rid of grogginess. So that's the next thing we're getting. Just woke up groggy and I want to get rid of grogginess. So that's the next thing we're getting. I just woke up groggy and I want to get rid of grogginess. So that's the next thing we're getting.
I just get so mad. I just get so mad. I just get so mad.
Why he mad?
Okay, I've lost like a few IQ points at this point.
Why that man mad, bro?
I think that's the other ortho thug.
It's an ortho thug.
The ortho thug.
I stubbed my
Ortho thug.
toe. I don't want a toe, so I got rid of my toe.
Hey, you know what, man?
I don't like.
There's been somebody who's been like commenting on my post, and they have the same icon of their show, Ortho Thugs or whatever.
Maybe it's Hello Listener.
It's somebody involved with them because and they're not happy about what I'm talking about. I'll tell you that.
It's probably the Jewish guy, Hello Listener, who's hiding behind the fact that he can't say Jew because he is a Jew, so he calls them Amish people. It's a very clever trick. All right, and he's also like, he showed up on like Toilet Bowl Earth show when he was crying about like his parents or whatever. He was crying live, and Hello Listener was like his emotional support puppy. So so they got some kind of weird thing. And also I suspect the Ortho Thug show is basically them doing the TBE and EBT bit. Right? Like they're acting like how those guys act on their show. And they so I feel like Jim Bob watching their show for so long, he was trying to get ideas for his new show. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it definitely seems very combative. I know that. Like my experience with the person that has this ortho thug tag, the conversations I've had with open surgionists that are supportive of like the Soviet Union and
Right.
Stalin and the Bolsheviks, like they're very open about it. It's the same behavior.
Yeah, you got to hit them with the the catacomb saints. You got to hit them with the American flag. All right. You got to be like, nah, bro, X out that shit. You're Russian fucking fake ass religion. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, it's crazy, dude. And they get extremely unhappy if you bring up Rocor history, like if like what happened in 2007, or a lot of their podcasts are getting angry because I've been covering the perestroika deception, which is like this concept that the Soviet Union didn't fall in the 90s.
Yeah, I seen that. Yeah,
it just took a new name. They changed from being the KGB to the FSB. Like Putin's a continuation of Soviet power. The Patriarch Kirill's still a KGB agent. The KGB is still fully controlling the Russian Orthodox Church. These are all things they deny, by the way. And they say the KGB doesn't exist anymore. Now, why, this is a talking point coming from Father John Whiteford. And they're pushing those polemics, and like, for instance, I know me and Joel went into one of their rooms one time amongst their people, and Joel had a picture of Russia's catacomb saints as his profile picture. and they put him in something called cringe containment and wouldn't let him speak, because they're worried that all the people they funneled into these discords and like these groups to funnel them into the Soviet Church or their world orthodoxy, if they find out about the catacomb church and true Orthodox and like the narratives they push are lies, they're worried these people will start jumping ship. And my guess is like I believe the Kremlin's funding these talking heads to perpetuate joining the Orthodox Church. And it might be like people like Jim Bob, people like Jay Dyer are actually Masons. I'm willing to say that straight up. Of course, when I went on TBE, he was like, everybody I don't like is a Freemason. But he jumped into the comments. He left the, conversation immediately. They don't want to actually talk about the subject. So
Yeah, I still have that recording, by the way. So it's cool.
yeah, you've seen how that went. Like he jumped right
Yeah, I
into
did,
the
yeah.
comments and started, speaking from there. And it's like, if you had something to say, why didn't you stay on the stage, dude?
And Jim Bob didn't say anything. He just fell out. He
He
fell
fell
right out
out,
the
but then he went
conversation.
in
Yeah.
the comments and he's commenting,
Yep.
like he's saying things to me in the comments. It's like, okay, dude, like, why are you so terrified?
Yeah, I seen it.
Yeah, like you're afraid, bro.
And
That's what
TBE
Dyer
and
too.
EBT doing the slander thing because they were calling Seraphim Rose all these names and Jim Bob wasn't attacking them for it.
Wow.
You know what I'm
So I
saying?
wonder why that is,
Yeah,
but
because he banned EBT from his chat for insulting Seraphim Rose, and then he brought
yeah.
him back in his chat. So I guess he's forgiven for the insult.
Well, I
Crazy.
could see why EBT would be angry at a Seraphim Rose because he exposes Roman Catholicism as being a false, heretical religion. Um, but the issue is even deeper than that because Seraphim Rose exposes the world Orthodox for bowing to heretics. You know, of course, now they're trying to canonize him, and they've got like some commission that's reviewing his life and considering canonization. But if they do that, here's the problem: they're going to have to admit that he considered himself a true Orthodox Christian, and that's why they don't want to canonize. And they'll even say things like, well, did he know that Father Herman was doing the things he was doing? Because supposedly there was some sex scandal with Father Herman, but this wasn't until after Father Seraphim died. So they're willing to slander his name and associate him with something that he wasn't a part of just to get away from the fact that he considered the catacomb saints true confessors and the true Orthodox agrees true confessors of the faith. That's how deep this whole conspiracy goes, dude.
Yeah. So let me think about something. You would say that in a sense the humanism is the origin of these problems when it started to escalate, like the precondition to the problems or something, like humanism, right? Because you mentioned humanism.
Absolutely. I think humanism is a major factor into the issue, and that's rooted in idealism, and it's rooted in the you know, I'll give you the actual breakdown because I have it here. One second. So this is something from lecture 3 of the Orthodox Survival course on the Renaissance. He says the life of the saint, which we just heard, Saint Paul of Obnora, gives us insight into a civilization which is exactly the opposite of civilization we are studying now. The Western civilization since the schism, which is the schism between Roman Catholicism and Orthodoxy, since the Middle Ages, in the traditional Orthodox civilizations such as that of Russia, very similar events repeat themselves. That is, there are barbarian invasions, monasteries may be laid to waste, the monastic life at one time flourishes, at another time it grows lax, And then again, it flourishes. Saints rise up, the devil is constantly attacking, there are invasions from the outside. All this happens without disturbing the basic harmony and equilibrium of the civilization. The same thing is true of Byzantium. The same thing is true as in the West before the period of the schism. There is nothing that we could call new because once Christianity has been proclaimed, once Christ came and established his church, there is nothing more that can be new. This is the preparation for the end of the world. And people who are penetrated by the principles of Orthodox tradition do not expect anything new in this world. In the West, on the other hand, beginning already as we saw in the last lecture with the High Middle Ages, with scholasticism, Francis of Assisi, Joachim of Flores, and the element of romance entering into religion, the new political ideas, there's already the idea that something new is happening. Christianity is being improved upon. There's a search for some kind of new Christianity, even though they do not use that word yet. And this emphasis is increased in the period we study now, that of the Renaissance, the period after the Middle Ages, roughly 13 to 1600. We'll find in this period that what began in the Middle Ages is already now becoming an epidemic. And there are things that happen which are totally new in the history of mankind, or they did not exist before, now attain some kind of completely new level. The purpose of these lectures is to repeat why we should be studying the development of modern mentality, is so that we might understand why the world is the way it is today, what has gone into forming our own minds, so that we can be orthodox by rising up against all the false ideas, all false formations in our mind, and seeing what is true orthodox mentality and the true orthodox teaching. Now, this is where he gets down to it. He says, unfortunately, the end of this modern period, which begins with a schism, has produced a generation of people who are quite unaware of the past, and therefore a person who does not know what his past is very easily becomes the victim of his environment, which is based upon an anti-Christian philosophy. He becomes this by everything which is in life around him, and we're trying to understand those things which are in the life around us from a deeper philosophical point of view, so that even the music in the supermarket becomes something philosophical. It has at the back of it an idea which is supposed to give us a certain feeling which takes us away from Christ. And so the purpose of this study in Orthodox self-defense. The whole course is an examination of modern history from the point of view of orthodoxy, which is rather a novel way to do it, because all history books are written from the point of view either they begin with the idea that there is a dark age and then an enlightened modern ages, and everything is criticized from the point of view of modern enlightened scientific world outlook, or else there's another school which says that Christianity, Catholic Christianity, is the standard and the 13th century is the pinnacle, and everything else is falling away from that, and they're the other point of view. But our point of view is orthodoxy, and from the point of view of orthodoxy, it should be said that the period of the Renaissance is actually less significant than the period of the Middle Ages. During the period of the Renaissance, we see the most spectacular changes and differences from ancient Christianity. But the actual period when the big changes occurred, which were later to read the Renaissance and beyond that, occurred as we saw in the last lecture in the period right after the schism. After this, everything becomes a logical deduction from that first change, because once orthodoxy has been left behind, there's nothing but the playing out of the new principles which came in, and all the principles which began in the Middle Ages will be worked out right up to the present day. So that actually today, the forces which are shaping history are just the same as they were in the 13th century, only have they obtained a more advanced form. The period after the Middle Ages is called the period of the Renaissance, the rebirth, that is, rebirth of antiquity. It is the age of so-called humanism. Okay, so here's where I'm kind of getting at. And it's very clear already what is the basis of the new epoch. We saw that the period of the Middle Ages was dominated by scholasticism, that is, the reason which becomes autonomous, reason which is placed above faith. And this reason, as Koryevsky very well saw in the 19th century when he was criticizing the West from the Orthodox point of view, very quickly turned against Christianity. First, it was supposed to be the handmaid of faith and serve Christianity, improve all the dogmas of the faith, improve a great many of other things also based upon authority. The authority both of Scripture, of the early fathers, mostly Augustine and Aristotle, since it was believed that Aristotle had the true view of nature. But in the age of the Renaissance, this reason turned against religion. Because if its reason is autonomous, it's able to develop its own principles. There's no reason why it should be bound to religious content. And also, we saw in the Middle Ages that great movements of Francis and Joachim were very monastically, ascetically orientated. But in the Renaissance, there was a complete reaction against that. And again, this simple matter of the context in which the new ideas arose and changed, and therefore no longer were people interested in either monasticism or having reason serve theology. And so we find in this period that the idea of monasticism and asceticism is treated extremely negatively, because the interest in the world has now become awakened. And so it was natural that at this period, Western man turned away from the church to pagan Greece and Rome, the monuments of which were all over the West and especially in Italy. And one writer has even said at this period, pagan Greece and Rome had their revenge on Christianity because that pagan antique ancient civilization had been overthrown by Christianity. The ancient pagan civilization which placed man first was first overthrown by Christianity. And now, when reason turned against Christianity, this ancient paganism had its revenge on Christianity, being united with reason. And in its turn, this paganism gave a great impetus, a great push to an ideal of total worldliness.
That's from
So this is how
Seraph Bros.
humanism developed. You
That's
see?
from Seraph Bros. What
Yes,
book?
from his
What
Orthodox Survival course. And so he's talking about the development of humanism and what actually happened. It was the philosophy of the philosophers that had initially been used to prove the dogmas of the church. Now they're being um, taken out of that
Yep.
context of faith and now being applied to pagan worldliness, and turning against Christianity. So it's a synthesis between, reason and pagan philosophy joining together as a revenge on Christianity. So that's where these ideas sort of develop at this point. He
I
says, so
see.
the ideal of the Renaissance is the idea of natural man and also of a natural religion which is understandable to reason without any special revelation. One of the great humanists in the North, Aramis, found in Greece what he called the philosophy of Christ, that is, in pagan ancient Greece. Quote, when I read certain passages of these great men, he wrote, of the Greeks, I can hardly refrain from saying, Saint Socrates, pray for me. Of course, he probably did not pray to the saints. It did not pray to Socrates. What he means to say is these pagan people are taking the place of the saints. So it is in this epoch that man was discovered, and there is a tremendous interest in oneself, the individual. There is a very good book on the subject of the Renaissance in Italy by Jacob Burckhardt, a 19th century scholar. By the way, there are quite a few good scholars in the 19th century and early 20th century who studied quite thoroughly their subjects, which seldom happens anymore. And they, even when their viewpoint is usually a quite agnostic or even atheist, because they so thoroughly investigate their subject, you can see quite clearly what's going on. And he treats a lot of the ideas which were prevalent in this period in Italy, which is the first place of the Renaissance, which later spread to the north. But there's a book by John Herman Randall called The Making of the Modern Man. And this is one of these agnostics he's kind of talking about that actually gives a valid critique that could be viewed from an Orthodox perspective as correct on the humanist issue, although he seems to be a humanist himself. And that it's a book from 1926. And in this book, he says this. He says, the Renaissance cared for less than did the Renaissance cared far less than did the 13th century, carelessly appropriating new worlds which never bothered to see as they were, but that enhancement of personality that comes with power. It is for this that Faustus is groping. Philosophy is odious and obscure. Both law and physic are for petty wits. Divinity is based on the three. 'Tis magic, magic that has ravished me. 'Tis magic indeed that ravished the age, the magic that abandons understanding to gain power. The power comes easily, but without understanding it is soon squandered in petty childishness of Faustus' desires. He has lost his soul for mere voluptuousness. The barbarian North has rarely paused in this yearning for power to question to what end It is not too much to see in Francis Bacon that the prophet of the fruits of science, who blindly opposed the scientific discoveries of his own day, who knew that knowledge was the power to affect all things, possible and fell or for lack of common honesty, the very epitome of the Faustus spirit in which the modern world has wasted its boundless gifts of nature's secrets. Our science has indeed been too often a mere magic, a black magic that brings destruction. We know the secret of the atoms and invent torpedoes and poison gases, and yet back of all this became, how does he say it? Baconian thirst for power that led to the dull degradation of Manchester and the imperialistic massacres of Armistar. There's an inner striving for something beyond that counts the products as mere baubles after all. He says the monk was gone, and his strivings for perfection beyond life gave way to the striving for a fullness of life. It is for others to decide whether this was an advance. We can only record and murmur with Bruno and the Elizabethan of Italians. Even if the longed for goal he never reached, even though the violence of the striving consumed the soul utterly, it is enough that it should burn so nobly. So this humanist is basically saying like it's no longer the age of the monk. You know what I mean? So he's making the point that Father Seraphim was making, like there's this rejection of asceticism and sort of, he's even questioning, is this a superior form of life as we descend more into the black magic science of this Faustian spirit of the modern age?
Yeah. Can you do me a favor later? Just take the excerpts you read and put them on the Discord. I will read them
Yeah, I got
again
you.
more thoroughly. I do
Yeah.
respect your anti-modernist perspective, anti-humanist perspective. I do have my own view. I'm not trying to get into argument here, but do you think
Yeah.
the anthropocentrism inherent in, like, I don't know, like Islam, Christianity, Orthodoxy, it could have like created the potential for the virus of humanism to sprout? You see what I mean?
Well,
Like,
I don't think that we deny that. Like, I think that, except the framing's different, right? It's like, instead of blaming Christianity for the reaction, I would say that the reaction was already there. That's why paganism's turning against Christianity by combining with reason. In the Renaissance, it's like this had existed in Rome. It was the dominant worldview. The pagan philosophers were highly respected. It wasn't until Christianity came and sort of like flipped the world back right side up from our perspective. And then it's not that we created this reaction, rather this was a monster that had been buried under a rug that sort of is coming back to life to get revenge, and it's not like, so to blame it on Christianity is basically saying like, you know, how could we be the blame for something that already existed? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, because it seemed like some of the pagans, they seemed to not respect monotheism because there was no representations of the gods, right? So they would say,
Right.
well, and
Yeah.
the gods were anthropomorphized within the pagan traditions already, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean,
That's my point. It's like if the tradition is already there, right, and it's just now combining again in the Renaissance, and it's actively, viewing Christianity as competition and as something that has to have revenge on. Is it the Christians' fault that this monster has developed to try to overtake it? You know what I'm saying? I would say no, because it's like, you wouldn't blame the superhero for trying to fight the supervillain. You know what I mean? I don't know.
yeah, I mean, I'm not blaming Christianity. I'm saying that it's just a conditional statement. Like, you need two things: anthropocentrism and a notion of progress to have the humanism, sprout up. I think so. Like, those are
Yeah,
like prerequisites.
if you take Islam, Judaism, and Christianity and combine them, with Greek philosophy, that does happen. Like as Seraphim Rose said, right? It seems to be an end result of focusing on the humanistic elements within the Greek philosophy to explain the religions. Right.
It's cherry picking, right? You know, whereas from an Orthodox perspective, it's like by the time you get to St. Justin Martyr, and even prior to this, it's like Christianity is seeing the rhetoric and the reasoning that is behind Greek philosophy as just as much a part of the logos as anything else in the world if it's directed towards truth, right? And it's like they seen the Greek philosophers as below Christianity. They seen Christianity as a superior philosophy, and that the pagans, philosophers only had snippets and only seen broken pieces of the fullness of truth that would be found in the Christian, system. It wasn't until those monks brought those books from the pagan philosophers after the raid of Constantinople into Europe that you have these kind of people cherry picking the ideas from the philosophers, disconnected from the Christian understanding of those monks that brought those books. And they're saying, wow, look, they're talking about particles, and they're talking about, and then they develop these sort of systems that get their revenge. They, because Europe had yet to really find the fullness of orthodoxy. So what do they find? They add their, European paganism to the Greek philosophers, and you get a synthesized, more hefty ideology that's competing with Christianity now. And it's dishonest a lot of times. Unfortunately, it's dishonest because they're cherry picking.
Yeah, but syncretism was existing even back then. Like Judaism, the idea of Satan came from Zoroastrianism. Like that's like accepted.
I would disagree with that. I've heard that, right? Yeah. But the concept of Satan, I think, there's a very different concept between Satan of Zoroastrianism and the Satan of the Old Testament. And, from our perspective, there's no religion. And I know modern scholars are going to have a problem with this. And a lot of people have a problem with this statement. But I go off of the saints. I'm not depending on modern scholars to tell me my religion. I go to the great ascetics. So in the case of St. Augustine, he says there's never not a time that Christianity didn't exist. What does that mean? In the sense that if we believe that God created the entire world and everything in our world, there was never not a time that the church didn't exist, in the sense that from the beginning, God created the angels. He was there in the beginning. He creates the earth. Moses is receiving a revelation of bygone times, right? This is a vision that he's documenting that's from an earlier period. The time period that Moses wrote it isn't important as to when was the vision given to him. What time period was the vision given, and what you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I take a sort of a different thing. I think maybe if I read Zoroastrian scriptures, they sound a lot like sort of Judaism, or like a lot of the teachings that I think are right in the Old Testament, right? Maybe some of the ones that are right in Islam and Christianity as well. Right. So I see a lot of true stuff in Zoroastrianism. Too much true stuff to ignore. I think possibly there's the founders of that religion were rightly guided prophets. Right?
Well, I think that in this sense, okay, so there's 3 sages, right? That Herod asked to go meet Christ when he's born, right? You know what I'm talking about.
Right, the Magi. Yeah, exactly.
The Magi, right? And they're supposedly Zoroastrians, okay? And they're studying the stars and looking at the stars. And, just like the Virgin Cybele, these were pagans that in their pursuit of truth, God revealed revelation even to them in their paganism, and it's like this isn't near a narrow or a broad take. This is like a mean between extremes, as Aristotle would put it, on how Christianity views truths within pagan traditions. We see it as like snippets or pieces of the universal truth that is Christ. So it's not something that is like it could be used to turn against Christianity to disprove it. We rather see that as further proof of the universal truth that is Christ being revealed even to the pagans, because it says that in the scriptures, right? It's like
Well, I
even
want
the
to just clarify.
Gentiles in their consciousness know the Lord in some way, right?
I just want to clarify something. The universal truth that's revealed by Christ or some kind of revelation, I would say that unique to Islam and Christianity, because I actually do not like Zoroastrianism being claimed by non-Iranians. You know, Zoroastrianism was an ethnic-based religion, you know, and I don't like white people going around and claiming my ancestors' cultures or that they were my ancestor or that I'm a mongrel, stuff like that. So, you know, I can sympathize with your Christian worldview and blah, blah, but I'm a little bit more, you know, like, you know, I would have preferred Iran to remain Zoroastrian, to be honest, you know, and to stick to itself, kind of like
We
the way
even see
India
those
remained Hindu.
magi, like, you know, those magi who were
Yeah.
Zoroastrians as being true prophets in the sense that they were guided by God
Well,
to follow those stars, and we consider them actual saints within our tradition.
I see.
Now,
Well, that's within your
we wouldn't say
tradition.
that they were Zoroastrian. It wasn't the fact that they were Zoroastrians that made them saints. It was rather that they heeded the call of God to do what he asked of them
Well,
in
that's
service
within
of
your
Christ.
tradition. You know, Zoroastrians were no friends of Christendom. They were not friends of Christendom.
No,
Really.
of
Like,
course not. And you know,
yeah.
like Christianity was such a radical system because it went against you know, Zoroastrianism and the Greeks teaching and Judaism and every tradition that was out there, really. You
Well, that's
know,
the thing is that you know, the Sabians and the Manichaeans, they successfully combined these things. So, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
that's
Those guys
true.
are different. Yes, those guys are different. Yeah.
I think that, you know, the problem with something like the Sabians is that they had too narrow of a view, or too broad of a view, rather, where they feel like they have to assimilate these traditions if they find pieces of truth in them. So it's like they can't distinguish between the truth that has been pieced in the tradition from the truth of the fullness of the tradition. And that's something the ascetics sort of talk about. That's why you have a book written by Irenaeus on the heresies, because there's a distinction between truth and falsehood, and you can find pieces of truth in those pagan traditions. You can, but also we understand from you know, Saint Justin Martyr that there was Satan was revealing things to the pagans based on things he might have overheard while he was in the heavens before the fall of the plan. So you'll have snippets and pieces of ideas that would be further found in Christianity. And why? And from our perspective, according to our saints, is because Satan wanted to delude people and carry them away into false teachings. Now, you know, you'll have the scholar who looks at that and says, well, that's crazy, you're just coping or whatever. But according to us and our saints, that's not a cope at all. That makes perfect sense according to our tradition. How wouldn't a fallen angel who was, you know, in the kingdom not know a bit of the plan? And if he did know a bit of the plan, wouldn't he use it to subvert people away from the truth? If he's the father of lies, you know? So
Yeah.
but they'll bring up things like Mithras or something like this. A lot of people don't realize this, but Mithras was a tradition that started 200 years after Christ. So the belief of virgin birth and all this other stuff, this was 200 years after Christ, and they backtrack it and say that it was, you know, 200 or 300 years prior to Christ. So they do things like that. They'll backtrack a belief system and say that
Mithra
it
is a
came
little bit.
before as a got you when it didn't. And
Well,
even if it
Mithra is
did,
complicated. Yeah, Mithra is I think the Roman one is substantially different from what was, you know, on the steppes or Iran or India, because, you know, they have Mithra too. But, you know, the Romans took Mithra and they colored it with Neoplatonism.
Right, but that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying is like,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
was the Mithra prior to Christ coming known to have been of a virgin birth? You know what I mean? Like we're talking about
Yeah, the double shot.
that documentary they released. I knew the person that actually released it. It was my girlfriend went to the same school as him. They went to the same school of the arts. Zeitgeist, that film.
It's St. Peter Joseph. Yeah, you told me this
Right.
before. Yeah.
Yeah, so that particular documentary is full of lies like that, where he's saying that Christianity and these pagan traditions have the same structure, like virgin birth, this thing, this thing, this thing. And then when you examine it, the context is completely off, and it's been disproven.
Yeah.
Like you could find entire websites
Yeah.
that prove like he's being intellectually dishonest and
Yeah,
he's
he
not
Yeah.
being
took,
honest about his time.
That's the scholarly consensus agrees with you. The academic
Yeah.
consensus agrees
Yeah,
with
he
you.
took it from this lady who wrote the book Christ Conspiracy named Acharya S. And then
Yeah.
she actually took a lot of her writings from a 33-degree Freemason named Gerald Massey.
Exactly.
who
You see what I'm
basically
saying
combined-
though?
Yeah.
So these concepts, and this is something like it reminded me of like Frankfurt School youth cults or something, right? Where it's like, how do we get the youth through a propaganda film to follow a Masonic doctrine that isn't true, where you distort history, right? And this again goes back what Father Seraphim says, that from the 1300s on, we're seeing this being repeated time and time again by the humanists, which is what Freemasonry really is. You know, it's an atheistic mindset that's anti-Christian in tone, and everything is to reject and refute Christianity. So there's a number of belief systems that branched out from that. Darwinism's one of them, you know, which leads to things like Hegelianism and Marxism and, you know, communism, and all these belief systems sort of developed out of that period of the Renaissance.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree with that. Yeah. So most of it. Yeah, I agree with most of it. Yeah.
Well, I would say, like, be honest with you, there's that book, I'm going to send it to you. It's Orthodox Survival Course. And if you were like, put it this way, if you want the perspective of an actual Christian perspective, and I'm talking about ancient Christianity, I'm not talking about what most Westerners consider Christianity. I'm talking about what the Greeks considered Christianity, right? And we can go to those early patristic texts. That viewpoint, which is very rarely seen by the West, or you know, even the East now, a lot, in a lot of ways, even the Greeks have lost their that truth. You know, I would call it distilled truth. It's an amazing perspective because I haven't seen anything break down history in that way, because we're given a very particular view of history, which I would say would be leaning towards that paganism that you know, combines with reason, right? Is like, that's the worldview we get. We very seldom get to see the perspective from the other side of that.
Would you say most authentic Orthodox or anti-modernist the way you are? Because you are anti-modernist.
I would say true Orthodox Christians are, and like there's still some world Orthodox that have traditional views, and they're few and far between. And at one time, maybe in the 70s and 80s, you could say that there was a remnant within world Orthodoxy, but I believe that remnant has dwindled significantly, like to the point where there might not exist anybody there that is traditionally minded, you know, because if they were traditionally minded, they would have broke communion by now. That's my feeling towards it, because there's no way, yeah, you know, if you want the traditional view that you're going to get from like a book like Orthodox Survival Course, you have to go to the true Orthodox Christians, because they're the only ones that aren't giving into modernism. These other people want to combine with the Presbyterians. They want to combine with the Roman Catholics, and they don't know the importance of orthodoxy. They don't know the importance of those early saints in that first 1,000 years of Christianity. They're not staying true to that first 1,000 years. And if they did, you would see they would understand why these belief systems are problematic from an Orthodox viewpoint. And as we see, if these people are accepting ideas like Chiliasm, and what's the theistic evolution, these are all modernist concepts that develop from the Jesuits and different things, and it just combines with orthodoxy and has an appearance of being orthodox and traditional, but it isn't. I think the greatest struggle of modern man is to find out what orthodoxy is. I know that's been my struggle, and like, even when you find it, it's being true to the tradition. If someone were to treat the tradition as if they were to treat any other tradition and they got to the root of it, I believe that there's a gold mine of wisdom that's needed for modern man to cope with the world we're in. Like, if I didn't have those patristic texts, I would have been probably still like doing the same old things I once was. It's been life-changing for me, at least. Because it's just forgotten. It's like important truths that are there, and there's a treasure trove of them that we can access. And especially at this time, there's Greek and Latin texts that have never been translated into English that we can easily translate now. And the more I look into those texts, I'm finding out things the scholars don't admit or don't know. It seems very clear the scholars are avoiding this subject. And it's unfortunate because it's a tradition that's owed, I believe, a scholarly pursuit just as well as Chinese philosophy. Why it's not treated in the same, why the Orthodox ascetic saints aren't treated in the same light as a Lao Tzu is beyond me. Because they're in the same line. I feel like he's a proto-Hesychus, in the same way you have Saint Macarius the Great of the Desert. Like, this is a Lao Tzu in a sense. If you read the words he's saying, it's just as impactful. It's just as there's a divine spark, a sacredness to the things he's saying, and it's multiple like
sorry
that.
to cut
Boy,
you off.
y'all sure do like that word divine spark. So does the artificial intelligence that they want me to use.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off, but you're saying there are no good scholars about these Orthodox saints? Like,
No, I think there is good scholars out there, but
okay.
it's few and far between. Because what you'll have is like, there'll be a Jesuit scholar that'll like cover Leontius of Jerusalem or something like that, right? And they have this problem because of scholasticism. They'll question it. Like, for instance, I'll give you an example. Leontius spoke about a Monophysite by the name of something the cat. Like, I forget his first name, but anyways, there was a third of this person. So Timothy the cat, right? Well, there was a Timothy the third. And scholars will say, well, how could Leontius be talking about Timothy the cat when he was 100 years prior to this situation? And once you look into it, you find out that there was Timothy the third that went by Timothy the cat of the same time period that Leontius is talking about. And he's talking to a Severus and a Colonimus. And they're sending letters to each other. So we can corroborate that he's not talking about Timothy the first, but he's talking about Timothy the third. And scholars will look at this and say, well, this is impossible. But it's because they don't have the context. And where do you get that context? It's further research into the tradition. You have to look at the letters of Colonimus and the time period of Severus to get that. That's a big problem with scholars, I see, at least. It's like they're not doing the proper research.
Yeah, that's most of them, but there are a few that do the proper research, right? Just a few, like,
right. And usually those they come from theological schools, like like they're actual monks. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah, I know what
the
you're
best
saying. Yeah.
ones I've come across have worked at monastery or lived at monasteries and have actually translated the text from Greek to English and knew the
Yeah,
language. And
there's a similar, thing with the, Buddhists, the different schools, and I'm pretty sure
right,
you
like
see
if
it
you were
with other.
go to
Yeah,
someone that was teaching Lao Tzu, you would want, like for instance, like the leading scholar in America in the 60s was Jiming Xing, and he was directly taught in China by the Chinese philosophers the teachings of Lao Tzu and other philosophers of China. Would you rather learn under somebody that had a direct connection to the tradition, or would you rather a scholar that has just read books from other scholastics? And I think there's a difference between the scholasticism of scholars and the traditionalists that are actually a part of the religion that they're researching or philosophy that they're researching.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's applicable to many traditions. Yeah, it's a kind of issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like they translated the Lotus Sutra. One translator tried to make it more gender neutral, believe it or not, and like that's crazy.
That's
Like,
exactly what I'm talking about.
yeah,
You see
yeah,
what
I
I'm
know.
saying? It's like
Yeah, I know what you're
if
saying.
they're going into the tradition already with like a modern filter and they don't have the equipment to sort of put the text in context in the tradition that it's in, then they're not meeting the text on its metaphysical ground, but rather putting it through the filter of modern scholasticism. And when you do that, you take everything of value from the wisdom of the text, and you put it to the light of your so-called enlightened modern mind. And almost it just feels like they look at the past as if everybody was stupid compared to them. And there's always this questioning, and a lot of times scholars will question things that are completely true, like the oracle bones or something like that. Like they question the meaning of a particular character in Chinese where someone translated as divining, and they argued, well, that can't be the term. And then the oracle bones came out of the ground and they ended up finding out that that letter actually meant to divine. Okay. So oftentimes scholars are incorrect, even and they'll go to the traditionalists and see them translating something correctly, and they'll question the traditionalists because they feel like they're superior, and it's an ego thing. Um, you got a lot of cognitive issues, and again, it's rooted in, like we were talking about, this Renaissance paganism turning against Christianity and all tradition, really, because it wants to put these traditions um, in the cage of progress and say that progress is superior to the tradition itself.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Yeah, yeah, you're very good at rhetoric. No, not rhetoric, but argumentation. Yes, yes. So I see your perspective. Yeah, you should probably have you tried debating other Orthodox like who are more progressivist
They
and like
block me. They block
oh
me,
yeah,
and they block most of us in the
Right,
tradition.
yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what's
they don't want
weird
to talk
is
to us.
yeah, like a lot of us tried to like debate like some of the influencers and stuff, and yeah, that's their general attitude. Like this guy here, like who's on the screen now, he refuses to talk to me, block me, refuses to debate. So
I
it's
would
like
love to debate a Jim Bob, dude, and
yeah,
I would get on camera with him. I would do you know what I mean? I don't mind doing that. There's like I'm not like hiding or something from these people, and
right,
we've put out a
the other
challenge
way
to Jay
around.
Dyer. We've put out a challenge to these people. I've jumped on their shows.
Yeah, they're hiding from you.
Yeah,
Seems like
I mean, and what it is they want the reins, right? They want to keep the reins. That's why, like, if we bring up, let's say, the Rothschilds, you'll see next week DPH posting a video on the Rothschilds. They want to make sure they're viewed in the light that they're the ones revealing all the truth and they're the trusted, it's
yeah,
gatekeeping.
or Anthony of Westchester or Westgate or whatever.
He followed me, man. He followed me recently, and I had joined. See, this is something about him. I was researching some of his work on the Kabbalah, right, from an Orthodox perspective, and I found his I found what he was revealing fascinating. You know what I mean? I agree.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
I thought it was fascinating. So I joined one of his discords, and I was like, well, I'm the guy who translated the princess uh 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 what's her name? It's a book called Maternal Lament, the Maternal Lament of Mother Russia, and it's a book that was banned in Russia because in it the woman documents how Sergius pointed out churches to bomb, right? So I pointed out, like, yeah, I translated this, long lost book of of the catacomb saints, and it was supposed to be translated by Father Seraphim Rose. It was given to Father Seraphim Rose in the Latina monastery by Archbishop of Verki, and there was a spiritual son of one of them in Russian, right? And I became friends with him, and he
Right.
sent me all these unreleased audio recordings, and he had this book that was in Russian, and I translated that book into English for the first time.
Right.
So I was like telling these guys about this, and I had recently done this, and I like sent them a copy of the book. And I was hoping maybe because they covered books on their channel, right? That they would cover the book. That's what I was hoping for. But no, that's not what happened. They immediately kicked me out. They trash
Wow.
talked me. They called me
Interesting.
crazy. You know what I mean? Like, it was crazy, dude. And all I was trying to do
Fascinating.
was have a scholarly conversation about a subject that I found important, in this book that I had just completed. But yeah, but then, a couple months later, recently, he adds me on X as a friend. And it's like, whoa, didn't you just kick me out of your server? You know what I mean? Like a couple
Right.
months ago. But now that you see where my research is going, now you're interested. Like, what's going on, dude?
Yes.
Which I feel like that's the steal for me. You know what I mean? Like you're
Exactly.
not talking to me or like discussing these things. You want to steal from me, dude.
Well, I hope you can debate more orthodox Christians regarding these issues of humanism versus anti-modernism. Which is truer to the anti-modernism and it's truer.
Modernity.
Yeah,
It's
modernity.
modernity, brother. And
Yeah.
well, see, the big issue why they don't want to face this, because if they were to actually have a conversation about these issues, they would have to admit that the jurisdictions that they're involved in are playing the game. Like, for instance, there was a podcast recently by one of the World Orthodox guys. I forget his name. But in it, they were talking about the New World Order. And they were like, we're safe from the New Order as long as we're in the church. And I go into the chat and I said, what if the hierarchy in the church starts going along with the New World Order agenda, right? And the two people on the podcast like, well, we seen that in 2020, and then their moderator, which is Slowboard Whiteboard, was like, get out of here, you're a true Orthodox schismatic. You know what I mean? So they don't want to have a discussion about these issues. Like, what if the hierarchy is accepting funds from UNESCO, which is giving it, which developed humanism. So the people that develop humanism are funding your church, and you're in communion with people. You know what I mean? So they don't want to actually get into the ins and outs, because if they did, they'd have to admit that they're along with the ride.
Yeah, that they're not as sincere and authentic in their beliefs. I mean, basically, they don't want to admit that.
No.
Yeah.
And see, they want to play as if they are, and then the ones that are truly convinced, see, they'll give lip service. So they'll say things like, yeah, we believe ecumenism is a heresy, but my bishop's still Orthodox. And within Orthodoxy, there's a concept called the golden chain. So everything flows down from the synod of bishops. So your patriarch, and then there's the synod of bishops, then the synod of bishops, then there's the priests, then there's the deacons, then there's the lay people, right? There's like a hierarchy here. And if the top of your hierarchy isn't directed towards orthodoxy and the synod's not directed towards orthodoxy, then how could your bishop being put in place by this synod be orthodox even if he disagrees with him, he's submitting to people that don't have the same agreement. So there's a link off in this chain. And if everything flows down from that bishop, from the patriarch, bishops, priest, laity, and there's a link off in this chain, that means there's a compromise here that's unacceptable, right? And within Orthodox tradition, it says that we are to break communion with those that go against the teachings of Christ. This is something that St. Paul said, that, you know, if anybody doesn't accept the tradition as handed down by us, let them be anathema. So by staying in communion with people with different beliefs that are giving into modernism, that are, you know, doing rituals with pagans at the World Council of Churches, your bishop knowingly seeing this makes him complicit. He can have lip service where he said, I'm against ecumenism, but if he's communing and kissing the hands of ecumenists, what does that mean? Right? And they're blessing the sacraments for you. You know, this is an acceptance of Antichrist, and it becomes this thing where we understand it's lukewarm. It's you saying, well, yeah, that's happening, but you know, it's too much of a problem for me to leave the heretic, you know, and then who becomes the enemy? It's become the traditionalist becomes the enemy when you've submitted and compromised to the modernist, because the traditionalist is a mirror. Now he's making you see yourself, saying, look, this is what traditional orthodoxy is, that this doctrine is unacceptable. So that's why we become the enemy. That's why we have to be blocked. That's why we have to be slandered. And said that we're, you know, schismatics and sectarians, because otherwise they would have to admit that they've compromised.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, yeah, I can sympathize with that. You know, it makes sense. You know, it's a new kind of problem. I don't know, maybe Tower of Babel or something was had similar issues in the past and it's hidden from us. I don't know, but these are unprecedented types. So these are
Check this
unprecedented.
out. So there was a time period where the Arians had did the same thing. So they took over churches in Rome. The Arians believed that Christ was a creature, right? So they put their bishops in place over churches in Rome, and then there was Orthodox bishops, and they refused to be in communion with the Arians. So they broke communion with these people. They didn't have their people continue to go to these churches. So what did they do? Instead of stay under a synod with the Arians, they created a new synod. This is something they say that can't be done. They say you can't establish a parallel church. Well, our argument is that we're not a parallel church. In fact, we're a continuation of proper Orthodox hierarchies that are directed towards traditionalist orthodoxy.
I just want to see if I remember this correctly. Arians, they thought Jesus was just a man, correct? Or am I misremembering?
Yes, they thought he was a super creature. Really, it wasn't this that he was a man; he was a super creature.
Super creature.
So he was like Superman or something, right? You know, it's like he was still a creation of God, though, but he was above all other creatures.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that was the Arian doctrine, but there was Orthodox who refused to go along with this. So instead of staying with them, they started their own synods and they created their, you know, they continued the church as it was supposed to be, according to the tradition. What the World Orthodox say is that the true Orthodox don't have the right to create their own synods. They're saying that you have to stay until a council. But who's to call the council? The heretic on themselves? Right? If the heretic is in power and he has the synod behind him and he's the patriarch, who's going to call a council on him? None of the heretics are going to call a council on themselves. So what do the Orthodox have to do? We have to split from them and establish our own hierarchy, right? With correct confessing bishops. And our argument is, instead of us being a parallel, to be a parallel, we would have to be the same thing. And we're not the same thing. We believe in orthodoxy. They believe in modernist ecumenism. See, that's the issue. But they conflate it. They act as if they're still orthodox, although they're heretics. So we're a parallel to them. But it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, what you say makes sense. Yeah.
Right. But that's the conversation the Jim Bobs and the Dyers don't want to have. Do you see what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
It's
Well, they
like,
work for the establishment. You know, the establishment doesn't want anti-modernist views like yours to grow because that would mess with their
well,
profits and
you
their
take like a Peter
stranglehold.
Harris, right? I don't know if you know who Orthodox Ethos is, but it's a guy named
Yeah.
Father Peter Harris, and he's with the Ecumenical Patriarch. And we had an inside guy that was working there at the Orthodox Ethos. His name is Subdeacon Nectaris. He's got um a publishing company called Orthodox Traditionalist Publications, and he's got a YouTube channel called Orthodox Traditionalist Publications, and he releases some great books that exposes all what I'm kind of talking about. Well, he worked with these people, and he came to realize that they were lying to the audience about historical narratives, about saints, and revising history. And he started calling these people out and arguing with them over this stuff. But it come out that this Father Peter Harris was being paid by the ecumenical patriarch, and they gave him a house to stay in. So he can't speak out against the ecumenists that are directing the church toward modernist reforms because he could lose his home. Do you see what I'm saying? Um, so that's the situation we're in. We have talking heads that are being paid off with homes and housing in order to perpetuate an agenda that funnels people into these churches that are directed towards the World Council churches and controlled by Freemasonry.
Yeah, and in the interest of multinational industries too. You know, what I mean, those guys too, and Freemasons. You know.
Now look, and now Father Peter Ayres will go to the World Council churches and he'll give this great speech about anti-ecumenism, right? But they don't care because it's just lip service. It's like, who cares if you say an anti-ecumenist thing at this speech when in practice you're still submitting to the ecumenist, right? So what it becomes is a cope for the faithful, and this is how the Father Peter Harris is the controlled opposition. So he's telling people, oh, you can fight within from within against these people that have controlled the hierarchy for 100 years, and nothing changes. And by the way, when bishops have stood up against the ecumenists and have spoken out, those people were deposed and tossed out of the church. And you know what? Father Peter Ayres didn't run to their defense when they were deposed and kicked out of the church. So when somebody truly fights from within, like he says people should do, he doesn't support those people. He only perpetuates the problem more. He funnels people in to submit to the ecumenists and pretends as if they're fighting from within, but in reality, anybody who does fight within, they silence.
Well, I have a quick question for you. It ties this all together. Would you say, in a sense, the Jews or the Jays, they're promoting like ecumenism and they're promoting like, you know, syncretism among all
Yes.
other traditions, but they retain the core of their tradition, like the Chabad, Lukavitch, and it's like
Yes.
like that.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's what Antichrist is all about. I believe Antichrist will be of the tribe of Dan according to our saints, and that's Jewish. So he'll be Jewish. He'll be set up in the temple in Jerusalem, and things like Christian Zionism are preparing people to submit to the Jewish uh, Antichrist, who will appear as Christ. And all traditions in the world, through things like the World Council of Churches, which is like a world religion, Antichrist will allow people to keep their tradition as long as they submit to Antichrist. So you can be a Buddhist as long as you submit to Antichrist. You can be a Christian as long as you submit to Antichrist. You can be a Mormon and so forth and so on. Or, you know, you could believe in Muhammad as long as you submit to the Antichrist. They have no problem as long as at the core the world submits to
Yeah.
their Jewish Messiah.
Would you say
Um,
that? Would you say this is an accurate way? So there's like a conglomeration of coordinating multinational industries, and they use the Freemasons and the Jews as a way to facilitate their growth and make people
Absolutely.
submit to their globalist agenda.
I believe
Yeah.
that's the entire goal of
Yes.
Freemasonry
Yeah.
is to perpetuate the humanistic doctrine. Um, you know, that creates a one world religion that's directed towards the establishment of a one world church of Antichrist. I believe that's all of this is directed towards. And they're doing it. Not all of them are conscious. Some of them are, right? I think that a lot of this is prophetic. So, you know, for my, you know, because Revelation speaks of like a one world government with a one world leader, and you know, anybody who doesn't submit them will have to accept the mark. You know, all these things are directed towards that, and we're seeing types. So in the scriptures, there's something called typology within patristics and theology. So typology is a reoccurring theme within the scriptures. The scriptures are sort of a coil, and prophecies are like kind of like flashes and lightning in a bottle. You can catch glimpses of it, but it's dangerous to be certain of things. So that's why we don't say we know the date and the time. But back about typology, for instance, like we would say a world leader that is directed towards 1,000-year Reich. Okay, that's a chiliastic heresy that was condemned very early on with the millenarianism. So who does that? That you know, we have the painter in Germany who teaches this. So he's a type of the Antichrist, you know, of this coming world leader, this charismatic leader that'll be supposedly be for the peace and good of all man, and is directed towards like an idealistic utopian mindset where humanism reigns, you know, where the individual is supreme, you know, in some way. But yeah, like all this is directed towards that according to orthodoxy. Like, you know, this is prophetic.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, got you. That's yeah, that's interesting. Like, yeah, it's pretty dismal, yeah. But that's
Well,
the
there's the
tradition.
same thing with the typology. Like for instance, let's go to the very beginning of Genesis. We know about Cain and Abel. Now, if you know Cain, he was a shepherd, okay, and you know Abel was a shepherd rather, and Cain, you know, he uh was growing plants, and when he went to give you know, his sacrifice to God, what does he give him? His sacrifice isn't acceptable, but Abel's was, and it was a sheep, right? Christ is known as the good shepherd, okay? So Abel is a type of Christ in the fact that he's a shepherd. Um, Isaac, you know, Abraham goes to sacrifice his son on top of a mountain. He stopped at the last minute. That's a type of Christ because it's like, you know, God the Father is going to allow Christ to be the sacrifice for all mankind in the same way that Abraham and Isaac were. It's a type. Job is a type, a suffering servant of sorts. All throughout the scriptures, we see types of Christ and of Antichrist, of true prophets and false prophets, of true doctrine and false doctrines. There's a dichotomy within all these belief systems, and each biblical story has these types embedded in them. That's why it's like a subset of theology that we study.
Yeah, I can tell you know, a lot of knowledge about your tradition. That's indisputable.
Well, you
Definitely.
got to, because
Yeah.
you know, for instance, like you know, especially Father Joseph, you'll see him all the time. He's debating Roman Catholics. He's debating Monophysites. He's debating, you know, name the tradition. And it's like, if you don't know your own tradition, how can you discuss these topics with another person, like Protestants or whatever? Um, in truth, though, there's a difference between complex simpletons and divine simplicity, and I think that a lot of times that's missed in our modern world because we're so obsessed with who has the most knowledge, and I think that sometimes, the modern people, scholastic especially, they're complex simpletons because they don't understand very basic concepts that are sacred. I'm sure you see that in Buddhism. Like, there's very simple teachings that only a Buddhist ascetic would understand, whereas like the modern atheist that's materialistic wouldn't get that concept. Um,
Yeah, you see that pattern, of degeneration in most world traditions because they're trying to spread, the Freemasons and the corporations, feminism. They're trying to spread inclusive diversity and economism, like, love your, like, and
right.
try to assimilate all of that. Yeah, I
Well, they
mean,
think the mind and like the rationale and logic of man is superior to what we would call the nous. So the nous is something higher than fallen human uh knowledge, right? So it's like in our tradition, after the fall of Adam and Eve, the consciousness of man is at a lower state than it initially was because there was direct communion with God. That's why when Adam comes in contact with all the animals, he names them, and each animal is given a name that correlates to the essence of the animal itself. So, for instance, like take the word serpent, in an initial language, probably which was what, Hebrew or something, there's a designation to the word serpent, even we understand today. There's something that innately about the word itself that describes the animal. And we would say that that is an indication that Adam had some higher form of divine revelation through his communion with God that gave him the ability to have superior wisdom than the average man. Modern man says that man has developed from a primordial sludge or something, and we're getting smarter as time goes on. In orthodoxy, it's reverse. It's ancient man. When man was closer to God, or as Lao Tzu puts it, the uncarved block. You know, man was wiser then,
yeah, that's the
and he's
close to the
degrading throughout time.
it's close to the traditionalist idea of involution. Have you heard of that involution? Like
Yes.
in, yeah, involution.
Rather than man progressing and evolving into a superior life form, he's actually degrading and separating more from the initial state that was higher than we are now, which is a state known as theosis, where man neither dies, feels pain, he can't drown, he can't be burnt. You know what I mean? He's at a higher level because death hadn't entered the world. At the point of death entering the world, there's a twisting of the conscience, and lies come in to play. Before this time, there was no such thing as a lie, which is a perversion of the truth, a distortion, a manipulation. So, from that perspective, the Orthodox Christian looks at the world through truth and lies and can distinguish between the two because we understand the fall. In other traditions, I don't believe that that understanding is there. There was a time where man was in direct communion with God, and then there's this fall. So the goal of the Orthodox Christian is theosis, which is to reach communion with God again and be in a state that Adam and Eve were in prior to the fall, or even in higher state. That's what's known as theosis. And there's been men who've reached that in this life. Saint Anthony of Egypt, you can read about him. They said when they seen him after many years of his ascetic labor, he almost shone like was glowing with the glory of God, or there was a perfection to him that was God given, and comes from him reaching theosis in this life. Theosis isn't fully in place until after the resurrection. We get image of what that looks like when Christ returns for the 40 days after the resurrection. He has a body that can move through walls. He doesn't, you know, they thought he was a farmer at a certain point. That, you know, it's, you still see the scars on his body, but you know, he's something higher than he was before. There's a transformation, the new body. And that's why when we talk about there's going to be a new earth and a new, you know, we'll have new bodies. That's what we're talking about. He's going to renew everything after the separation from the sheep and the goats. But the point I'm making right now is mainly about, okay, so within Roman Catholicism and the modern Orthodox perspective, the goal of the church isn't the new kingdom or like the new heaven and the new earth, and like the mystical body of Christ. Rather, it's about establishing a worldly kingdom and a worldly institution and a worldly utopia. It's the same goal as the humanist, because they're too they want to take the modern mindset that wants this utopia and then give it a Christian, you know, wrapping, because they've lost the understanding of this theosis. Like they don't have this same concept of reaching this salvation, you know, through communion with God. They have a very different perspective on this, on what the purpose of the church is for, which is the salvation of souls. They see the purpose of the church as being efficient in worldly terms. So they could see Christian charity as merely being, you know, someone paying for machines or something that cure some sickness with the machine, rather than depending on God for a divine healing through the sacrament in some way. So they want a technical sacraments in a sense. It's like Antichrist appearing to heal eyes or like heal the blind or heal the sick. There's a false sacrament going on.
Yeah, I appreciate the time you took clarifying your views more further. Like I have a better grasp of them now. Thank you. There's a
Yeah, I
don't know.
appreciate the hearing me out. I'll be right back to this.
Blinking, so I got rid of blinking. Fucking retard. I don't like blinking, so I got rid of blinking. I don't like blinking, so I got rid of blinking.
So, Leon, do you have anything you want to talk about, Leon? Yeah. Leon, is he even there? Dark Lord, Dark Priest, are you there?
Perhaps.
I guess he left. So,
Fucking retard.
Cyborgs and things of that nature. Now, some people say that
Fucking idiot. I don't want to grow bones. It hurts. I don't like losing my baby teeth and growing real teeth. I don't want to grow bones. It hurts. I don't like losing my baby teeth and growing real teeth. I don't want to.
things of that nature. Now, some people say that
Fucking idiot. I don't want to grow bones. It hurts. I don't like losing my baby teeth and growing real teeth. It hurts. Fucking putz.
This makes us.
Who they is?
Retard.
Who they is? Who they is?
Chase says for $5, if we obtain the tech to live forever, quote, then an asteroid hits and then they have to live on a desolate planet forever. Yeah. This guy sucks. How could he be a good father? Imagine being a father when you can't teach your children, especially your sons, that a part of life, a part of your virtuous Christian paradigm or, absent Christianity, I don't know what it would be, but that your job is to avoid hardship? Dude just needs his nose broken. Dude needs to be slapped like woman propaganda. $5, I want a robot that will chew my food. Yeah, totally.
But wait, that's so weird. He just ascribed a Christian paradigm to the transhumanist guy. Like, what are you talking about? Like, he's not supposed to be referencing a Christian paradigm or whatever. So,
Hey, dude, that's so accurate. It really is. I don't want to. I need another hand to masturbate me. I need another hand to masturbate me. I don't want to. I need another hand to masturbate me.
Yeah, Jim Bob. Over here, we call that prostitution.
the ghost hand.
I want a bird to spit food in my mouth from the sky. Well, I don't want it to. I don't want to breathe myself. What the hell?
He's strawmanning hard right now. This is crazy. It's like a strawman city. And you got your black babies.
It's not human. And
essentially, it's don't be a human, right? Like every part about being human. That's the irony. Is like Andrew says this in the debate. He says there's like a I don't know if it's a contradiction or a paradox where he says. Andrew said it at some point in this debate. I don't know if we'll get to it, but he basically said like he said something like, well, you're trying to transcend what's human, but the thing is you're always judging from the human perspective.
It's weird that he said like, I want a bird to spit in my mouth or whatever, and he's like talking about being a baby, and then they show a diaper commercial. It was kind of weird, wasn't it? But
it's like you try to transcend being human, but it's always the human that's judging the transcending level, right? Where you're at. So you never escape being human. And in fact, you almost necessitate that the human part stay so it can judge your pattern, your process. This is why it's stupid. Because if you transcend the nature of being human, the judge of the new thing ultimately would be who? Be what? What would it be? A robot? An executed set of commands? What are you asking for, Zoltan? Oh, I just want to transcend being human. It's such a prison. I'd much rather be a calculator.
Maybe it should be natural selection, like, what Albert Wesker wanted to do, just make it natural selection. Only the strongest survive.
right.
I mean, I'm just saying, since they're always wanting to talk about races and this and that, then, that's what it really sounds like to me, It's just, why not, like they do, what they did a few years ago, just release something out into the population and, only the strongest DNA survives.
Yeah, absolutely.
Later, you fucking idiot.
We can discuss that and debate that. But the question is really not whether we remain human. It's really
Jim Bob by Hardy. Yeah, I already know that. Sean, thank you for that. $10. I watched a couple of his music videos. Thank you for
whether
that.
that is the natural course of action for the human species, who has a very rational brain and this affinity to evolve. And now we've sort of taken evolution into our own hands. And I'm very excited about that. I've spoken all around the world.
You're going to die alone. You're going to die, and all of your little boards and just graphs you drew and you thought was going to happen is not going to happen, buddy. Zoltan.
See, that's Cope, because it's like he's pretending like none of the transhumanist predictions are going to come true, right? And I think that's a dangerous line to tread on, right? Some of their ideas, you should at least believe them that they're going to try to attempt it, even if you don't think it's possible, right? They are attempting it, right? So this is a problem. The problem is in the attempt.
You're in your 50s for sure. It's over, dude. Stop. I'm really very much excited to live.
About that, World Bank, World Economic Forum. I've met presidents. I advise heads of state, whatever. It is. I've been doing it now for a good solid.
How long is this guy going to prattle on for?
15 years.
Debate a lot of people.
You get this guy like nice and drunk. Like maybe like 45 minutes into this, he'll just be like, just litty, and then he'll like start reviewing in a different way.
A lot of people, all sorts.
Yeah, I noticed like Andrew Wilson doesn't like smoke and drink on camera anymore. You guys notice that? It's kind of weird, right? It's like he stopped doing all that now that he's on a larger platform. It's like, and that was stuff that he would do to show that he's like an authentic person. So it's it's pretty funny.
Ways of life and belief structures. I never quite encountered someone who was a man who said so much fucking bullshit, who fit in so much bullshit in 10 minutes. Gotta hand it to you.
And I'm amazed myself at how fast the movement is growing. I also understand, and that's why I'm
the movement
here tonight, that Christian society finds this despicable in many ways, especially if you're a traditionalist.
Yeah, it's called a heresy.
Which heresy is it? I mean, it just sounds like pretty much just atheism, right? I don't think it's an offshoot of Christianity in any way, right? You could have your transhumanism without Christianity. So why does it have to be heretical, so on and so forth? Right? That's it. Like he's trying to say that transhumanism is a heretical form of Christianity. What?
More than 18 million Americans are living with cancer, according to the American Cancer Society. This morning, our sponsor, Eli Lilly and Company.
What the hell? This is like a black Chinese guy? Like, what the fuck is going on?
This is why I just want to fight. I'm so tired of I'm just so tired of commentary. I'm tired of framing. I'm tired of drawing. I'm tired of writing songs. I want a damn war.
Yeah, there's plenty of wars going on. You can go join one of them. And instead of sitting here drinking and streaming. I'm sure you want a war.
I want a war.
I'm sure you do. It's a keyboard warrior. It's a keyboard war. Or is it a screen war?
That said, there are some Christian transhumanists.
It gets worse. He's running for a CA governor, studying in Oxford. Essentially, he diminishes the status of the office. Yeah, he probably wants to like vote in like what's the future technocratic version of Plato's Republic, where it's not even people who are fancy, it's just AI directives. Like, when are we going to get the first company? Like, it starts with a company. When do we get the first company voting into office? It's an individual voted into office. Okay, then if you do a company, then when do we get the first AI voted into office? Is it in our lifetime? We're in the first like it doesn't have to be at a massive level. It could be at like some weird, South Dakota, some town of like 10 people. They go, well, we decided because of the amount of people and the drag we have of resources, we've just introduced an AI that just sort of sits around and aggregates all of the data from our small community of 100 people. And half of them are drunk natives. Hey, do you think when drunk people, you think when Indians are drunk and they do smoke signals, they send out slurred symbols?
I don't know, Jim Bob. When you drink and get drunk, do you twirl your Superman curl? Like, so fucking stupid.
I quite like that joke myself. I just got a visual of that. That's so funny. There's like things are like spelled wrong, whatever that means. You send out a smoke signal, but you're shit faced, and a wolf comes, and you're like, I don't need you. Why are you here? This is a smoke signal. Hi, yeah.
We can get into that as well.
My bad.
But the real question is there really a problem between Christianity and transhumanism? And if you follow the Bible literally, there's certainly a major kind of chasm that we're going to have to find. Can we close that divide? Probably not, but we can discuss it. And that's why I'm here tonight. So I hope
he contradicts himself like 20 times, because he says you can't close that divide, but then he says he accepts 80% of Christianity and he rejects like 20% of it. And then the guy, Wilson keeps asking him what part he accepts or what part he rejects. Right. And then also the Wilson guy is saying pretty much emphatically that you wouldn't have transhumanism without Christianity, because you need the growth of Western values with Christianity to supply a sort of background to develop transhumanist ideas. And then so the guy sometimes vacillates between saying that he totally rejects Christianity to saying that he wants to compromise with some of it, or that Christianity supplies a great portion of the Western ethos. So then he accepts a form of cultural Christianity, so on and so forth. So he continuously vacillates between the position that it's amenable to Christianity and then not. All right.
Well, don't it go to say that in a way some of these people can kind of like, especially someone like Mr. Zoltan over there, they can kind of just move the goalpost when and where they want back and forth. And I mean, who's really gonna like make a big deal out of it? That's the way I see it. They can sit here and say one thing, 5 minutes in the debate, and 20 minutes later, if you forgot about it, they'll go and move the goalpost and say something completely different than what they said beforehand. And even if it's brought up in the debate, in the grand scheme of it, like, people just overlook it or don't care.
So I'm looking at the time here. It's 7:20. So at 7:30, I have to go do my show. If Neurojack wants to either keep the stream running or, I guess he can recover his own stream if he needs to. But I think 10 minutes, right, I will go and do my show here. So let me go ahead and message him here. Otherwise, I guess everybody will leave the studio and then it'll just naturally end. So if we all do that at the same time, it should just naturally end like it did yesterday. 10 minutes to my show. Blessings. All right. So let me get up on this thing.
My introduction has introduced you to some of the ideas of transhumanism.
Yeah, it's stupid.
Transhumanism, as well as who I am, a journalist, a gubernatorial candidate for governor in California as a Democrat, as well as someone who's been writing and speaking on.
Oh, he's so political. He's such a politician.
The movement now
He's going to do great.
for well over a decade.
I don't hear a single, not in that long-winded diatribe. Nothing in your fantastical world that you gave us did I hear a single argument. Not a single argument presented.
Okay, Andrew, 5 minutes on the clock.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I've actually listened to quite a bit of your stuff in preparation for this debate. So
I'm sorry.
So you are consistent, if nothing else, about your view, which I appreciate.
Look at that. So he says his worldview is consistent, but that literally means nothing, right? Because he says that it, like, he doesn't have a moral framing for his worldview, that it has no telos. So how can it really be consistent at the end of the day, right? And so yeah, so there's a lot of places where, so it's kind of weird for him to say that. What does he think is consistent about the guy's worldview then, right? It's sort of just a vapid statement.
So debating about transhumanism is somewhat difficult.
I like how Andrew butters up his filet before he just eats it. What a bad man.
Yeah, I mean, he offers him no contest. This is essentially what happens.
What a bad man.
Because it's never altogether clear what anybody is talking about when they debate it. Transhumanist ideology is usually baked into other systems which support it, rather than being a philosophy which stands out on its own. A sub-position, if you will, of a generally greater position, focusing mostly on elongation.
The India moon landing is, yeah, dude, yeah.
Of life and transcending the humanity of human beings and their biological limitations. I would like to give a short analogy about this by referencing it to a small Midwestern town called Raccoon City.
You know what's weird about the transhumanists? Because atheists here.
I think it's interesting. You can see that creeping out, the Chicago Bulls sign behind him, that he has the bull with the two horns behind him when he does his show. It's kind of weird, dude.
Says something funny. He says, I don't want to take a breath and breathe in. I want a machine to do it for me, which is funny because, like, the thing you want to avoid in the world is being on like an iron lung. Now, it's amazing that we have an iron lung and we could keep people alive and stuff, but to seek the remedy to ailments as the norm is a really bizarre take, where you actually like for instance, I've never thought about this. I just got my concealed carry renewed, and one of the guys in the class didn't have a leg, and he had a bionic leg. And you think, okay, cool. In the absence of a leg, a bionic leg, that's pretty cool that you have that. I'm glad that humans, through their capabilities, have developed this. Nice. But then at the same time, a transhumanist.
So see, he's not thinking like at what cost all of that scientific progress came with. Right, he's just accepting the benefits of technology and science, and then when it seems to intercept with his basic worldview of morality and seems to differ with it, he thinks he could selectively accept or reject the benefits and harms, right? And that's just not how it works.
Just looks at the bionic leg and they go, "We should do that," and you're like, "Wait, no, that's for when there's a problem." Like, it's good that we have that as a solution to a problem, just like like an iron lung, bionic leg, fake eyes, fake heart. The transhumanist is all wonky. They're basically like, wait, let's skip the necessary ailment that draws in the remedy, the technological remedy. Let's just skip to the remedy. And you're like, why, dude? Our bodies are better than the machines a lot of times. Now, it's not true for like.
Yeah, that's a fact. You know, they're trying to change nature, and obviously nature has the fingerprints of the divine, unlike their inventions. And it's tried through the course of history, through trial and error, what works and what doesn't work. Right? So it's pretty obvious where the solutions are, right? It's not in the technology, it's solutions in nature.
Calculations, like a calculator can do better stuff than us, but a calculator can't build a calculator though.
Adobe Acrobat Studio is all new. What can PDF spaces with AI do?
Wow. It's quite a number, but yeah, a calculator can't build a calculator. Okay. I'm trying to see where he's going with this. But we can't do the things we do without the calculator. It allows us to calculate faster. It changes the speed of our calculations, right? So it changes the scope of our actions, right? Yes, a calculator is a dangerous invention. Right?
And the transhumanist is lost. And I know this because I was, like I told you guys, I was a transhumanist. I was an active, passionate transhumanist. And the philosophy of it, once you discover the philosophy, how broken it is, it's so broken and backward.
In Raccoon City, a private corporation released a virus which altered the genes of victims. Most victims entered into a state of what could only be referred to as zombification, including many of the animals.
Okay, I guess that's where we'll leave it for here for today. Are you guys here?
Yep.
Okay, I don't know if Unseen Warfare is here, honestly. So unfortunately, we cannot leave the studio all at once. So let me see what's going on here. Okay, so we need to sort of end this stream here. Mm. So I'm not sure what to do, but yeah, I guess I'll just go start my show. Yeah, blessings. So I'll see you guys over there.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so I'll tell Unseen. Leave the studio if you come back in the background here. Leave the studio when you come back. I gotta tell Neuro, like, we gotta plan this better. If he's gonna do a stream, then he can end it in time for my show. Leave the studio when you come back. Unseen. All right. Okay, I'll talk to you guys soon. Blessings.
Oh, we're still live, huh? I'm the last one standing, I guess. And I didn't know I was still in the show. Leave the studio when I come back on scene. Okay, sorry.